X, are you here?
Present.
Present. Spoonie, Timothy Spoonie.
Present, sir.
Margaret and Mary. Do we have a Margaret and Mary?
Yes.
Cool.
And the margaritas.
All right. Class here. We're ready. Let's go.
Yes, let's go.
Okay.
This is the time to line up behind your team, to support your team, have faith in that team.
It's peaks and valleys. It can't always be good. And as I always tell people, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. But when we do go about
house call, Trevon Diggs pick six. It's coming. They see it. Knocked away. Oh, Gregory. Hurts in trouble. 3 Cowboys wrap him up, make it 4. Micah Parsons is unblockable.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? You are now tuned into the Freestyle Friday edition of the Pick Six Sports. What you got, Nix? I got Spoonie in the building. TGIF. Hope everybody's had a fantastic Friday. Things are going well for you, and now you're locked in with us as always. Give it a share. You're already here. And for everyone around the way, whether it's Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, slide on over here to YouTube and hit that sub, because we do put the link. You can come up here and get in any questions. We do have a special guest in the building tonight. But before we get to our special guest, Spoonie, how are we doing this Friday, brother?
Oh, good. Tired but excited. I'm good though.
Tired but excited. Is the weather just beating you up there in Brooklyn? Is that what's going on?
Oh, nah, it's the weather, but it was a couple of things I had to do today. Helping some people out and stuff like that. So I've been at it all day with it, and I'm just not feeling great that I'm able to come home and rest and relax, and I'm looking forward for a W and an addition to the Dallas Cowboys. So it's just something to look forward to. A lot of times that happens when it's a Friday night. You're gonna chill for the weekend, and you expect something. That's where my mind is at right now. The day's out. I'm done what I'm done.
Okay, Spoonie always looking for the cherry on top, looking for a dub and an addition. My guy, how are we doing, my guy?
Man, I couldn't be better if I tried. Life's good. It's Christmas time. House is decorated. Shopping's mostly done.
Okay.
Georgia's in the SEC championship game tomorrow.
Okay.
Make sure to tune in and watch that. And we have a special guest in the building. We get to talk Cowboys football.
Couldn't
be better.
It's the
not be better.
Wonderful time of the year. And O's already done with Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
Shout out
You guys saw Kelsey and Jordan Mailata's Christmas album. You haven't seen the Pick Six Sports Edition. Wait till that drops.
Yeah, it's coming. Don't worry about it. But without further ado, everybody in the building, some quick shout outs. Aaron in the building, Steve White, Van Horn, Bruce has got the toxic juice, Gregory. Now it's, as we watch this name grow, the miserable toxic Tom Downey burner account going through. Debo in the building, what's going on? What's going on, Aisha? How are you doing, girl? Hope everything's going well for you. Yeah, man. And of course, the Wrench gang in the building. Mendoza. What's going on, Mendoza? Appreciate everybody in the building as always. And without further ado, y'all don't want to see our faces. There's a guy here y'all might want to see. Y'all might know him. The one, the only, Mr. Jon Machota. Let me just roll out there. Formerly of Dallas Morning News, The Athletic. He might have a podcast you might have heard of, maybe, about them Cowboys. I mean, he stays busy. And he's in the know. John, how are you doing this Friday, my guy?
I'm good, man. I just want to say though, from that intro you guys have is so good. Like they should do something like that at the stadium. I mean, that is elite quality right there, man. I'm impressed. But no, yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Well,
DJ's daughter.
Shout out to my daughter,
Jay.
producer Jay, aka Jayla. She put that together for us. And it's funny that you mentioned that because we've had this conversation when you go to home games and let me say this first and foremost. I like AC/DC. I'm not a hater. One of my favorite rock bands of all time. Boy, are we just tired of Thunderstruck before the game? We're in the stadium. Can we not get something else going? This maybe.
It's funny you say that because you know who I think probably hates Thunderstruck the most, but will never admit it, are all the cheerleaders because they are constantly having to practice that over and over. Like when I get to the stadium, it's usually like 2.5, 3 hours before the game. So they're doing a whole routine to that same thing then. So that's not even all the behind the scenes. How many times I always joke with other people that cover the team that they must get so sick of hearing that song. But it's funny you say that because a bunch of us that cover the team were just talking about this topic the other day because a couple of weeks ago being in Minnesota, nobody messes with Minnesota. Like they have the best pregame, the best everything. It's crazy.
The fake snow is amazing.
The fake snow is incredible. Yeah,
right.
It is. And I mean, just the way they're built up, the lights, everything that they do in there, is just the elite, like number one top level for something that. And I think that one's interesting too because that stadium's kind of similar to AT&T.
Right. Came out towards spring.
SoFi is kind of like that, but their intro ain't on that level either. But no, I mean, you guys, your intro is dope, man.
Appreciate. Well, first and foremost, thank you. You're running up my tab for Christmas for my daughter, so thanks. She's gonna watch. It's like, hey, Dad, hey, payola. On the backside, which is interesting enough, just because of the Cowboys and being about the grand scale and what they do and the ultimate showman that Jerry is, and they've just kind of been kind of casual with it. Maybe one day we'll get some different things happening or whatnot, but say less. Here we are. Thunderstruck. Love it.
John, the chat is going a little bit wild right now. Some people are just discovering you're a Knowles fan. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we go. Oh.
Big time.
Oh. I mean,
it's
we're
probably one of my
out there.
favorite sounds in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I mean, not for you. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, it is for a different reason because the Braves.
I mean,
we do it, but it's definitely FSU's thing. We just kind of borrowed it after Deion played.
I've always wondered. I mean, with Washington changing the Commanders, Cleveland changing the baseball team. I've always wondered, is it going to get to a point where now I know the Seminole tribe of Florida, backs the school and and they're all about it. But I've always wondered, is there going to be a time where they don't do that? And what will happen with the fans? Because you can have the band not do it. Like I'm sure you guys are familiar with David Hellman's annoyance about LSU on Saturdays and how let the band play neck or whatever. Well, people are still going to do those type of things because it's this long time tradition and whatnot. But yeah, no, the war chant is, man, when the Knowles are playing well, like they were against Florida the other night, and that war chant's rocking in Doe Campbell, that's probably one of my favorite sounds in the world.
Yeah, you're not wrong, because I basically grew up for a lot of important time in my life in Polk County, Winter Haven, and I was around a lot of that. And that's back when all three, the U, Florida State, the Gators, that were really good. And man, I'm telling you, talking about a bloodbath. And it's funny because once I come here to Texas in 2003, Texas A&M, it is built different in Florida between those three schools. It just is. And you're not wrong. Whenever Florida State's good and that's rocking. I'm not saying it's when Kansas City gets it going, but boy, from a college standpoint, you're not right. It is right there.
They'll kill Kansas City. They'll blow Kansas City out of the water. But I was at that Chiefs game. I was at that Chiefs game against the Cowboys last year. They were rolling. It ain't even close. I have some friends that are Chiefs fans, not even close, man. I'll tell you.
There it is.
I was at that game this year in New Orleans when they opened against LSU. and that stadium was like, I thought it was going to be 80% LSU fans and like maybe 20% Florida State fans, but it was 50-50. And just because LSU was just playing so bad, I mean, it was just constantly. I mean, I lost my voice because that's all we were doing was just the war chant the entire
can't stop.
game.
It's so good, we just can't stop. Fair enough.
I mean, I went to the national championship game in 2013, and it was out at the Rose Bowl when they beat Auburn, and Auburn too, man. I mean, I was stunned with how many fans they probably were, I don't know, 70-30% over Florida State. I was stunned, but because they won, got the war chant. It's one of those things where you don't need a ton of people, but if you get enough people doing it, you'll probably be able to hear it, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like the Cowboys fans on the road when you're beating that team and you're watching, even if you're watching it from home, you hear, "Let's go Cowboys." And like, oh, how many Cowboys fans are there no matter what?
Yeah.
And they show up on the road. No,
sure.
John, I have a question for you. You may not have the answer. I just want to know what your opinion is. It's a FSU Cowboys tie, so it'd be a really good segue to get into the Cowboys conversation. But Deion Sanders is in the news right now because he has 3 opportunities that all look like they could be pretty good moves up in the ladder, and he's been incredible at the college level so far as a head coach. But Cincinnati, Colorado, USF. Do you have a guess? I would have to think it'd be Cincinnati would be my gut, just because they're the best school of those 3 and be the easiest to kind of jump into. But what are your thoughts there?
So for me, I think USF makes the most sense because of the fact that he can go in there and he can steal kids like he stole Travis Hunter from Florida State, and he can turn USF into really, I mean, Willie Taggart had it going in a good direction before he left for Oregon. I think that he could win there. And then the key thing to all of this is that the expectations there will be the lowest. You go to Cincinnati and you have 2 years where it doesn't look quite as good as what, because that's the thing with Cincinnati. It's not just Luke Fickell. That thing's been running for a while. They've had Mark D'Antonio, Brian Kelly. Like, there's going to be expectations there. Now they can probably get a little bit better players right now, but I could see him turning USF into a team that, you know, maybe they win 10, 11 games and, you know, they're like Tulane is this year or UCF type thing like that. And then he uses that to get another job behind it. I know that, I mean, a year ago with how bad things were at Florida State, I was all about, I was like, hey, try and get him. But somebody close to him told me that, man, they didn't make him very happy when they didn't really show much interest in him when they hired Mike Norvell. And so I don't know if Florida State's necessarily would be in the mix. Now they won't be getting rid of their coach now, but I've always thought that one day I could see Deion coaching them. So, I mean, any of those would be great. And I mean, I think he's going to be an outstanding coach wherever he goes, but I just think the recruiting wise at USF, he could turn that around pretty quick.
Yeah, I was always USF for a couple of different reasons. I was forgetting him home state, right? We know that. Their facilities are really good, again, from being out there at the times of being on Temple Terrace with them and everything. But on the backside, they're not a Power 5 conference. So the jump is, I'm going to go to a non-Power 5 conference, right? Do my thing and gets me to the Power 5. Whether it's Florida State, I know there's a long list there or whatever.
Right.
But I think it's an easier bridge to a Power 5 than jumping in from where he is now, kind of building it up. It's kind of what I thought. So I'm with you with USF. I understand the Cincinnati, though, because of being there and playing baseball and stuff like that. But USF just, to me, seemed to make the most sense as well.
There's more than enough talent in the state of Florida to go around to 4, 5, 6 different schools. You know, you just got to stop those kids from leaving Florida and going to Alabama and going to LSU, some of them going to Georgia. If you're able to keep them in state, it's like what you talked about in the 90s. That's when you have Florida, Miami, Florida State all good at the same time. And it hasn't been that way for a couple decades.
Yeah. Jerry Jones was on 105.3 today. And part of his interview, they asked him about Deion Sanders. And he went ahead and gave Deion the tip of the cap that he could be a pro head coach. Obviously not quite there yet. Well, you know, he may make that jump sooner or later. I just thought that was pretty cool to hear Jerry, you know, give the endorsement publicly that he has no doubt that he could be a NFL head coach.
Jerry, the ultimate plant in the sea for like 10 years down the road, right? Whether he's going to be here. Now, you already know. But of course, look, I didn't want to hear us talk about college football. Y'all are here. Y'all know us talk about the Cowboys. And obviously, Cowboy related with Deion, but we'll pivot forward. First and foremost, let me pivot to you and let you kind of jump out here, and I'll let to get everybody's sick when they come onto the show. The Cowboys are sitting out here at 8-3. We see what they've done over the past couple of weeks. What's your overall feeling about this team and how this season's progressed in general, John?
I mean, it's lining up to be the best. I started covering the team in 2011, and it's got all the makings to be the best team, excuse me, that I've covered. And with that being the case, it might be the best team since the 90s Cowboys, really. I haven't seen the Cowboys, you know, go back-to-back years of playing well. You know, it's been one up year, then down, back up, then down, whether it's injuries or whatever. But for them to be able to do this back-to-back years, this rest of the schedule they have coming up makes me think that there's no question they win double-digit games for the first time back-to-back years since '96. That's crazy to me. So I think they're in a great spot. I think they really need another receiver. Not because I think CD and Michael Gallup are coming off the best game that they've played together in that Giants game on Thursday, but I'm more of you get into January and then all of a sudden, one of them does something where they're out for a quarter, they're out for a half, and then all of a sudden that receiving core looks real thin because, players haven't stepped up or they haven't, gotten to the level that they were hoping, like a Jalen Tolbert, and we don't know exactly what James Washington will be able to do. But if you get that ironed out and you can stay relatively healthy like they were last year going in the playoffs, I think from what they learned last year in the playoffs and just this team being another year more mature together, I mean, they got as good a chance as anybody.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we talked about in this channel, right? Spoon is just simply, it's not about the big fish, right? Odell, the big fish. That's what's going on, the full court press, if you will, from the Cowboys front office. It's somebody coming here being a number one or number two. And the great thing about seeing Michael Gallup the past 2 weeks, physically seems like he's finally arriving at getting there. But it's what do you have after them? Noah Brown flashed a little early. Here we are with him now. Unfortunately, Tolbert, I said it about a month ago. I think it's just a redshirt year for him now. Just, we wanted to be better. It hasn't worked. Obviously, they wanted to be better too. It hasn't worked out. Simi Fioco's been on the IR. And to your point, James Washington, it was supposed to be like, 7 weeks, maybe 10 at the worst. And
yeah.
We're like, 17, 18 now, somewhere around in there. So you don't know what you're getting from him. I think just from the bolstering the roster. And the one thing I like to say is adequate NFL depth. And I think the Cowboys in general just haven't played with adequate NFL depth at wide receiver throughout the year. And I think if the medicals, and he's 75%, you feel a lot better about where you're at the wide receiver room moving forward.
Yeah, no question about that. I'm a guy that I thought they should have kept Amari Cooper. And I'm saying that now. And I know a lot of people look at that in hindsight and be, oh yeah, of course they should have. But Dalton Schultz being back, I did not think he would come back from that knee injury as fast as he did. That's been huge for them. And then the tight ends. I mean, I don't think anybody expected those rookie tight ends to step up the way they have. And so there's ways that they can win against a lot of really good teams and put together several wins in the playoffs without Odell Beckham. But I think it provides you insurance. If he comes in, you think he should be able to at least be the number 3 receiver. And if he outperforms that, and let's say he gets to a point in the playoffs where he looks like he did with the Rams, then hey, that's just icing on the cake and you take it to another level. The other thing I'll say about Odell, that it gets talked about a little bit, but I don't think it should get talked about. It doesn't get talked about enough. Is that's not a receiver room that's going to have any issues with him. Like they'll welcome him with open arms. It won't be any issues like, man, Odell's here now. I'm not getting looks my way, or what happened to me being involved in the offense. You're not gonna get that from any of these guys. They're just, I think last year and just the pandemic year, a lot of these guys have been around for that, and they're willing to sacrifice for whatever it takes to win at this point, just because, let's be honest, it's been way too long for the Cowboys. I think everybody in that locker room knows what it would mean to be that team that finally got the Dallas Cowboys over the hump and back to, the glory years.
And that's an interesting point, because that we've talked about here as you said, since 2011. Can you remember a time the Cowboys openly have full court pressed anybody available, whether it was, in the regular, training camp into, we can add somebody in preseason, or obviously the big open season of free agency? Have we ever, since 2011 to now, right? That's 11 years, maybe a little change. Have you seen the Cowboys really push forward this way?
No, I was thinking of back when I first got on the beat. I remember there was this push from Jerry, and the coaches talked about their interest in Nnamdi Asomugha, but not anything like where you get all these players involved, and with such a proven talent like Odell coming off of the season Odell just had, where he literally steps in. And I mean, without Odell, I don't think the Rams win the Super Bowl. So to be able to add a piece like that, and all the guys know him because of, I mean, he's got a superstar personality, and then he performs like a superstar when he's healthy. I just kind of the perfect storm. His personality, I don't know. I don't know anybody that I would say their personality fits the Cowboys that's in the NFL right now more than Odell Beckham. I can't think of, I mean, I definitely thought it fit Dez Bryant. I see a lot of similarities with Dez and Odell, and they're close. I don't know. I think it would be the perfect fit for them. It's just all about, is he healthy, and then how many years does he want in this deal, and how many years are the Cowboys being willing to commit? But to your original question, yeah, we haven't heard about this because, let's be honest, the Cowboys just haven't been involved enough in free agency with, players from other teams over this last decade. That just hasn't been part of their plan. So it's just been so rare to have anything like this.
We do occasionally hear too, people bring up, well, they mentioned Bobby Wagner and players like that. The extent of it is completely different. It's a night and day difference between being linked to, that's a DQ guy, he's coached him in the past, and things like that, to everybody in the organization talking about him. Even Stephen Jones sounding genuinely excited when he talked about it. And Stephen, the guy that we look at as being, he's the frugal guy. He's looking at the pie and doing the due diligence, and that's what his job is for the organization. And even he seems excited, like, we'd love to have him. If we can get it done, it's all going to depend on what he's looking for and if we can make it fit. But I haven't seen anything like this at all.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because this thing's been going on, I feel like, from us asking players to coaches to Jerry about it for, it seems like, over a month. Maybe it's been under a month, but it seems like that. But it just, every step of the way, there's always somebody along the way that says something that it just takes my surprise level to another level, because I'm just like, man, they really do want this guy. Up until, was it Monday, when Mike McCarthy is asked if the Odell plane incident in Florida has changed anything, and when he said no, we're still full steam ahead, I was like, oh yeah, man,
yeah, it's on
this guy. Like, they're not even asking, because Mike McCarthy, you got to remember, he's coming from Green Bay. They're another organization that they're not going out and adding anybody, even though I always like to point out, their best years with him are when they went out and got Charles Woodson, they went out and got Julius Peppers, but that wasn't a big part of the way they built that franchise. So this is some new territory for him to be part of, the quote unquote marketing, which, I think he could take or leave. I don't know that that's necessarily his favorite thing, but it comes with the dinner with the Cowboys.
Big facts, because he said the landscape's very different here, right? He's talked about that. And, one thing we've always talked about is you don't have to go win free agency, but sometimes you have to be like the Packers, and every once in a while go make a move. Whether it was with the Smith guys, and Preston and the other guy, and what they do, you have to go win free agency, but sometimes you just have to. But the other point I want to bring up, and you talked about it, because I agree. The crazy thing about last year, and we're talking about the differences here with Lamb and Gallup, and if they get hurt, right, you have him in the wings. People forget, I think, at times, whenever they signed Odell, Robert Woods and Cup were still there. It was a day later in practice that Woods gets hurt, and he's gone for the season. And how big was it to have him then? Because you slid him in, and obviously they go on with the Super Bowl. Obviously gets hurt there. Maybe he's the MVP. He was having a great game. We don't know there in the first half, but they probably don't accomplish what they were going to do without adding him. But a lot of that was him not coming in a quote unquote 1 or 2 or whatever you're adding to the pie. Shout out to Stephen Jones. And then boom, the very next day in practice, Robert Woods is lost for the year. That was just huge. And you just never know those things are going to happen. So if the medicals check out, right, that's a great point there about adding him here now, with where we're seeing Gallup kind of walk through the door physically, Lamb or whatnot, but you just, hey, things happen in this league, right?
One of the other things I think makes a lot of sense about adding Odell, you talked about him with the Rams last year, that playoff experience, the Super Bowl. One of the things that didn't sit well with me, and probably didn't sit well with a lot of you guys, is after they lost to the 49ers, Mike McCarthy talked about how, I don't know, the guys look kind of nervous. And you're just kind of like, you play for the Dallas Cowboys, you're in the playoffs, you're at home. Yeah. You are the only home team that lost in the wild card round, and you're nervous. Like, I'm just going to say that Odell Beckham will not be nervous.
They wasn't playing Super Gremlin. That was our problem, apparently.
Yeah, apparently a boombox is all it takes. One guy walking out the boombox, and our team
going like Thunder, AC/DC killing us out here. We wasn't playing Super Gremlin. Yeah. With that being said, though, and we'll kind of put a cap on here. I know your time is limited, and we're getting the questions here about Odell being here or not. Odell percentage-wise, and what you've seen, who you talked to, and everything's happening here for you. We've talked about what we think about beforehand, but for you, what do you think, John, the chances are that Odell's going to land here and actually be a Cowboy?
Yeah, I think it's about 60%, and that's just because of the medicals. If you tell me he works out for the team on Monday and everything goes well, I'd bump it up to 80, 85. But I don't know if he's going to work out. They want him to work out, but they're hesitant on saying that he will definitively work out. And I just don't know that they're going to commit to him financially if they don't get that workout. Just going off of, videos and things like that of him working out, that I don't think that's going to be enough for them to commit to him financially, unless somehow, and I don't know, I don't see Odell being down for this. If you would make the contract just almost all incentive laden, like, you play this many games, this is how much money you get. Now that will still be in there. That was in his Rams contract, not just individual, but them getting the Super Bowl. He got a bonus, things like that. That'll be in there anyway. But if he's not going to work out for you and there's nobody else, because I don't think if he works out at all, I don't think anyone's going to sign him. So I'd say 60% Cowboys, 20%, whoever else, Bills or Giants. And then the other 20% I say is that he doesn't play this year, that maybe he just doesn't feel completely confident, and maybe he can't get another team to buy in. And he's like, well, I'll just wait till this season's over, and then I'll go into the off season and I'll be one of the names in free agency, and I'll be completely healthy. And over this, second knee surgery on his left knee, second ACL tear. So that's a possibility. But yeah, I mean, if he's going to play football this season, no one's got a better chance than the Cowboys.
We have some questions in the chat. Spoonie, y'all want to get some questions off real quick before I go to the chat?
Yeah, I just want to ask, we know as far as the Cowboys players, we know Stephen Jones, the front office, Jerry, Mike McCarthy, how they feel about Odell becoming a Dallas Cowboys. But what's it like away from the cameras, the microphones? What's it like amongst yourself and the other media hearing Odell could be a Cowboy? How does that make you feel when you hear Odell and the Dallas Cowboys?
I'll be honest with you. Any media members or anybody that isn't down with it, I really don't care. I think it's silly. I don't know how you're not all in on this, just because, like I said, I've been covering the team since 2011. They've never been this close. Why wouldn't you be all in on this? Why would you want to just keep going through the same thing? Win the wild card, lose in the second round, losing the wild card round, team falls apart. I mean, any chance you have to add to the team to make them better. Everybody I know that covers the team would like to cover this team winning a Super Bowl. That's the ultimate thing, because there's nobody that's really on the beat that has covered them winning Super Bowl. I mean, because it's just been that long. So no, most people are on board. There's very few people that, have their apprehension. And I think the ones that do, the name that you hear come up is Terrell Owens. It's people that were around TO and the way that whole thing went down, which is, I mean, different head coach, different times, different player, all that stuff. So some of the people that were around then have, I think, a little bit of caution, but I don't see anybody, if he gets signed the day after, just talking about how bad of a move this is and how this is going to blow up in their face or anything like that. I think everybody around the team realizes, like, hey, you got something special going on in the locker room. You have this franchise quarterback who is the clear leader of the team, and he has all this experience now. The only thing's missing is to get in the playoffs and get hot at the right time. And let's be honest, when I sit there and say this is the best Cowboys team I've covered and might be the best Cowboys team since the 1990s, I mean, let's be real. It's because of Micah Parsons. I mean, you get a freak show like Micah Parsons in there, a game changer that is just so rare that there's not any non-quarterback that you would trade this guy for right now, and even at the quarterbacks, it's only going to be like, a Mahomes type or something like that, but it's on a very rare situation. He's in the prime of his career. He's young. He's hungry. I mean, this is the time. I mean, ride that guy as far as he can take you. I mean, he's just such a special talent that doesn't come around very often. And I think he's what takes them to the next level. I'm not sitting here saying this offense is better than 14 or 16, but this defense is light years better than those defenses were. So if you had to compare this offense to those defenses, I think this offense is way better than, I mean, I love Jeremy Mincey. I love Rolando McClain. But I mean, those defenses in like 14 and 16, they're just not even on the level of this offense or defense. So everything's there for you. So why not go out and get them?
Boy,
like you were talking about with Micah Parsons too, is we talk about it a lot in this show, and I know a lot of people do too. There's game-changing players, which he is, but he's a culture-changing player, and that's why it's so significant. And his odds right now for Defensive Player of the Year are absolutely insane. He's minus 1,200. The next closest is Nick Bosa, who's plus 1,100. There's nobody even remotely close to him on the Defensive Player of the Year odds, which I thought was crazy. So I have a quick question for you, John, and then we'll get to the chat and let you hop off. Injury report we know that there's a bug that's been going around the locker room. Jerry talked about it, and McCarthy talked about it, that it looks like Trey Diggs is going to be good to go. Michael Gallup's going to be good to go. They're still listed as questionable. Anthony Barr, coming off of the hamstring injury that he re-aggravated, looks like he's probably good to go. Is there anybody on the list, maybe Jaron Kearse, I haven't heard as much about him, that looks they may be out this week, or do we think we're going to be full clear with everybody?
Yeah, the only one for me is James Washington. He's the only one that they're kind of on the fence on if he's going to play or not. And if he does, I don't think it'll be a ton, but they'd want to probably get him out there for maybe a handful of snaps or whatnot. He would be the only one, because I think even from what I've heard this week on Anthony Barr with the hamstring, because when he re-aggravated that like a little over a week ago, I thought he was going to be out for another 2-3 games, but it sounds like he's really close. So outside of that, no, I mean, we talked to Trayvon Diggs today on a conference call. He'll play. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to play. DeMarcus Lawrence all season for the rest of the season. It's a very management like during the week. So whenever you see him as limited or whatever, that's just because they're just managing his foot issues and things like that. They don't need to see DeMarcus Lawrence Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They need to see him on Sunday. So no, I mean, I look at this Cowboys roster, and yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of a flu bug going around, but I think that they're about as healthy as you could hope for at this time of year, especially considering you're getting Tyron Smith, I think, will return to practice next week. I mean, we've seen him out at practice and on resistance cords, and that he hasn't worked into any drills, but I think that'll start next week. And so maybe you ramp him up to where maybe you have him for, I don't know, maybe Jacksonville or something, and then you're able to, hit him be closer to being back against Philly or something. I know that, they're hoping that, he can get back as soon as possible so they can start working that offensive line group together. So there's so many things that just remind me of last year at this time, of just how everything's trending in the right direction. Their health is in a good direction, especially compared to the rest of the NFL. So,
yeah, and bringing up, Tyron Smith, not Tyler. The crazy thing for me, we're talking about trending in the right direction, that we were actually talking about in the space when I was mentioning, was like this year for offensive line play around the league in general, not just what's going on typically here. And we're not in a bad spot by any stretch. Offensive line play has been kind of bad, whether it's just injuries or guys who were drafted kind of high not panning out over the past couple of years. Like, it's just down overall. And the Cowboys are in a very unique place, in my opinion, that if you're getting Smith back, Tyron, and you're signing the other Smith, Tyler, inside, look at the depth you create. Now you have McGovern, and we've seen him play right guard and play fine last year in Tampa. And you still have Peters in the wings at swing, quote unquote, swing tackle if you need him. Boy, the Cowboys offensive line and where they're at, and they played with it a little bit, right? We're seeing a little bit late in games. Okay, Tyler's going inside, seeing what he's doing there. You're able to create some really, lack of a better term, phenomenal depth here on the offensive line in December. And a lot of teams in general, forget just this year, it typically doesn't happen that way. But in a year where offensive line gameplay has been so down, what a huge check mark for the run for the Cowboys.
So the reason that it's down, Mike McCarthy is completely dead set on this. He's talked about it quite a few times with us. And it makes sense, is that when you have a collective bargaining agreement like the NFL has right now, you can only work so much in the offseason together.
Right.
And for an offensive line, especially the way offensive lines play nowadays in college, it's so hard to transition from that in 1 year to the pros. The season's so much longer. You come from a team that just plays a spread. You might not even be huddling. You might be a team that barely ever runs the ball, even from under center. There's just all these different things you have to do in the NFL, and you just don't get that time in the off season to kind of work together as a group so that you can kind of grow together.
That continuity.
And the Cowboys were able to have that for so many years, because it was like, you knew you're going to have Frederick, you knew you're going to have Martin and Tyron, and then you could just kind of piece guys in around there, Lyle Collins and that, Ron Leary. So, but now it's kind of injuries and things like that. You're not able to keep that same group together. But you mentioned it's not just a Cowboys thing. That's the whole NFL.
Right.
The Cowboys, though, 14 sacks allowed this year. The Colts,
let's go.
43 sacks allowed. Pretty big difference there.
And Braden Smith's out at right tackle.
Ooh,
we'll get to some Colts talk here in a second. Over here, our guy, Ron, says, for our guy, have you heard about AB's play and possibly having Kelvin take his spot?
I'd be stunned if that happened. I'll tell you that right now.
Boom.
I'd be stunned. I think that they're in a lot of trouble if Anthony Brown went down or Trayvon Diggs. You know, when I talk about the adding Odell, let's remember, hey, you're obviously going to pass up on J.C. Horn or Patrick Surtain to get Micah Parsons every day of the week. But let's not act like that they didn't look at corner like, hey, if we put another guy over there, you know, you have a J.C. Horn on one side or a Patrick Surtain opposite of Trayvon Diggs. Just, I mean, how monstrous that could be. And I know that there's a split with this in the media, and I know there is with fans. I'm not as down on Anthony Brown as a lot of people. I think Anthony Brown is solid. I just look at teams in that make the Super Bowl and go deep in the playoffs. Not everybody has two shutdown corners. You know, you're going to have a guy that, he's going to give up some stuff here or there. And I just don't think that. I think you could find corners better than Anthony Brown in the league. I don't think that there's just an abundance. There's teams that they're loaded with them. But I still think there's a considerable gap between Anthony Brown and Kelvin Joseph. I don't think that the coaches will be completely confident going in that direction just because of the experience Anthony Brown has. And even though this isn't part of the question, I'll just add in there that's why I'm interested to watch too. When Anthony Barr comes back, you know, Damone Clark's played pretty well, and they have their set size super high on Damone Clark. I mean, Dak was just talking about the other day of just how, you know, they think that he's got a chance to be a star, and so. But when Anthony Barr comes back, are your coaches going to feel more confident because Anthony Barr's been in the league? He's seen everything. You know, I'm talking more for in the playoffs. Or are they going to continue to ride with Damone Clark? And maybe they don't even know that now. Maybe they're just going to let it play out. But that's just another position that I got my eye on. And what's the other one?
The other one is,
that's a good one.
Is this a Zeke or a Pollard game?
I know Mike McCarthy would be just fine with it being 50-50 for the rest of the season because he wants them both to be as sharp and as healthy as possible in the playoffs. That's what it is to him. But I mean, with that being said, they'll ride the hot hand. So I see Pollard having the bigger numbers. But I'll tell you what, that Z game surprised me on Thursday because, you know, anytime a guy comes off of a knee injury the year before and he puts the knee brace on and you're just like, yeah, you can just tell he's a little off. He's not back. So then he puts a knee brace back on, even though it's not the same one this year after the knee injury. And I was like, that's probably going to restrict him a little bit. And it really didn't. And he even said the other day that he might get to a point where he takes it off. So I think it's going to be close to a 50-50 just because, you know, McCarthy's not going to say this, but they're focused on what they can be in January more so than, you know, I mean, they obviously want to win every week, but it's also about like ramping it up. And when you get into December, he wants it to start hitting its stride. So you're playing your best once you get to January.
You know, and it's interesting as you talk about going back to the first half of that question, or the first question in there with Brown. We talked about this as soon as it happened. Jordan Lewis injury kind of got glossed over overall, right? For fans and stuff like that. But it mattered tremendously because now you're putting in Bland in there, which makes you very, you know, thin. And if something happens to Brown, and right to your point, and boy, in these Twitter spaces, these guys are crucial on us, Spoonie. When we're in there, they're on our heads. For a guy who's been defending Anthony Brown from last year to this year, and the one thing I try to say about Anthony Brown this year, I was like, look, you don't think you're seeing the same results from him. I say, but you have to look at what's happened with Diggs. Aaron Rodgers threw the ball one time over there. There are teams now, they're just like, wherever Diggs is, we're not throwing it, which means Brown's going to get more balls his way. He's still playing well, but there's just more things happening over in on that side. And even during the Giants game, I was like, all right, halftime, that's it. I'm through with Slayton. Put Diggs on him, let's shut it down. Look, even me, I mean, I fell into the trap. But I'm with you. There's not a lot of number twos. That's why I tell people, it's like, you go to number twos in the league, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, there's not a lot that are doing better than Brown. You can find a couple here and there, but overall, what Brown brings to the table, I think he's just the easy, low-hanging fruit to kind of beat on him sometimes. But it's really more so because of what's happened with Lewis not being here and where we're at, ultimately a cornerback.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I look at what teams really are completely solid at every single position. You know, I mean, the Eagles went out this offseason. They addressed a lot of holes, but they're also not going to be able to sign a lot of those guys long-term. I mean, this team's also focused on, you know, when it comes to Odell, for example, they're not going to do anything that's going to give them any chance of preventing signing Trayvon Diggs or re-signing CD or Micah Parsons. I mean, that's already locked in. They can't let any of those guys go out of the building. And so they're set on having those and having that defense built, you know, around those guys for a long period of time. And so that's kind of why you're in the situation right now. But I mean, if they could have another starting corner on the roster, they certainly would love that. But I don't see anybody on this roster that's taking Anthony Brown's spot.
My last thing, stamp chat real quick. Lewis, Brown, any of those guys come back next offseason? Or you think they're both out?
Oh, I could see one of them. I don't think they both will. I think that one of them does, and then I think that the Cowboys use a pretty high pick, on a corner somewhere, whether it be at the end of the first or end of the second round. I don't know, maybe even third. But I don't know that they have their number 2 corner on their roster right now, just because I find it hard to believe they're going to be able. There's just something about, especially if the Cowboys have a good season, that I could just see. Kind of like the Cedric Wilson last year, where someone just gives Anthony Brown or Jordan Lewis money that no one would sit there and say that you shouldn't do anything but take that money. Just, man, that's amazing. Good for you. So if the money's right, if the money's comparable, then I think both of them are back. If their deals that they're getting off from other teams are similar to the Cowboys, they're both back, and there's no question they both love playing in Dallas. But you just never know, man. There's always a team that'll come out of nowhere, like the Miami Dolphins, and go after these guys.
Facts. Go ahead.
John, are you okay with one final question?
Oh yeah, I got plenty of time. You guys are good.
Okay. So, question from our guy Egbert. He said, "What is the best path, in your opinion, for the Cowboys in the playoffs? Whether it's matchup, winning the NFC, or going on the road." I would add another one too, because there's a lot of you can go a lot of different ways with it. Do you think having a bye is advantageous? Because a lot of fans don't want the bye because they think you have that time off, and then. Because we've been burned in the past, but the flip side of it is you only have to win one game and you're in the NFC Championship game, which you haven't been in forever. So what is your definition or your plan for the best path for the Cowboys in the playoffs?
I would say just percentage-wise, it's going to tell you the best path is to have that bye. Yep. It gives you basically a free win and nobody gets hurt. So if you can have that, you're going to take that. If you don't get that, personally, I think they need to go through Tampa Bay. They've never beaten Tom Brady. If they beat Tom Brady, I just think what that could be in terms of momentum is just way greater than if they beat the Vikings or, I don't know, whoever, because they're not going to play one of the
Spoonie's scared of the
NFC
Niners. Spoonie's scared of the 49ers.
The Niners are another one that, but because they lost to them last year, I think there'd be a lot of motivation there. But this is the part that you guys are going to absolutely disagree with, is that I would want no part of going back to Minnesota. How many times are you going to go up there and keep winning? Like, eventually, law of averages says you're going to go up there and you win with Andy Dalton and then Cooper Rush and then Dak Prescott. Maybe you do it again in the playoffs. But there's a part of me that I'm kind of like, that's one of my, I think for me personally, least attractive, because one, there is a high chance that practice week is not that great because they're just calm down, 40-3. We know what we're doing here. And then you go in that building and it's rocking and you just get off to a slow start. And next thing you know, you're hanging in there. And believe me, yes, I mean, if it's Dak versus Cousins, I'm taking Dak every day of the week in a shootout in the second half. But still, you don't even want to be in that position just because the law averages are going to tell you eventually, just how many times are you going to go up there? That's the law of averages is why I think that they need to go through Tampa Bay, because Tampa Bay is not what they've been in the past. I don't think Tom Brady is what he's been in the past. He can still beat you, but if they beat him, I just think what it'd do for their confidence and be able to build off that, I think that's what they need. I don't think that they need to or go through San Francisco because they lost to him last year. I also don't think that going up to Philadelphia will be as daunting as I think some people think. Like, I don't think that they look at Philadelphia like, I don't know how we're going to beat them. I mean, when you're Dak Prescott and you have the record that he does, 26-6 against the NFC East, I mean, I don't think that they look at it as, man, we're going to have to go through Philly in January. Like, it's going to be a great game. Who knows who'll win? But I don't think there's any teams in the playoffs that they look at as like, oh, I don't know if we can beat them.
They won't be nervous, is what we're hearing from instead of last year. And again,
I mean, one of the big things, just look at the quarterbacks that are going to be in these playoffs. I mean, it's just not. You get past Brady, and it's just you got the better quarterback in every single matchup. So up until you get to the Super Bowl. So I mean, you got to love that. I mean, that's one of the easiest ways to look at if you're picking games. Who's got the better quarterback play.
And with upsets, you might end up playing a Geno Smith, a Heineke, a Daniel Jones, depending on how things go in the playoffs. So I'm kind of the mindset of I want all the smoke. All of it. So let me play Tom Brady and slay that dragon. If we're gonna win a Super Bowl, which obviously whatever it takes to win the Super Bowl at this point, let's just do it. But if I can win the Super Bowl and beat Tom Brady, great. If I can go to Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game and in their season, even better. If we can play the Chiefs in Pat Mahomes or the Bills and Josh Allen or whatever it takes, obviously the ultimate prize is just winning. But I don't want to see us, at this point, I just want to see us slay the Dragons. So leave no doubt. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay,
if they were to blow out, if they were to blow out Tom Brady in the Bucs in, let's say, the first round or something like that, what that would do for that, I would be stunned if they laid an egg the following week. I think they would be just focused and motivated by that. That to me, I think is the best thing that could happen to the Cowboys is have to play the Buccaneers.
I would love that.
And that's the great thing about it. Just talking in general here, as we're sitting here going into the Colts this week, and everything's in front of them and what they want to go do. Right? Obviously, maybe a little help, but as we've talked about, whoever wins the NFC East is probably the number 1 seed. But the two things the Cowboys have in the bag with the wide open, more than in recent history, this NFC is very wide open. The two things that travel, running game, defense. And the Cowboys have those on deck. It seems even like last year, or even underneath the McCarthy era here into year 3, they've developed, we think, an identity, right? We kind of figured things out here and there. Kellen Moore at times can get, I know people say too cute or whatever, maybe just overanalyzes. For you, looking at Kellen Moore at times, go back just to Giants game in the first half and what they were doing, and then you saw the flip here in the second half. Is there some concern for you at times with Kellen Moore still? Again, I think he's a lot better than people at times want to give him credit for, but I think sometimes just the idea of some of the calls he's doing, it's like, why'd you do that here? Where are you at when you talk about Kellen Moore with this team and what's happening right now?
Yeah, I still think he's one of the better play callers in the league. I wouldn't sit here and say he's the best. I wouldn't, necessarily say he's top 5. I would have to. I haven't really sat down and went through all the teams to think of where he'd be. I still think he's one of the better play callers in the league. I think he still gives them advantages over other teams. I thought that he was great in that Vikings blowout. There's just always been a part of me that always wonders with a former quarterback, that put up numbers. They're always going to want to kind of lean back to that passing game. And you obviously have seen that since Dak has been back. I mean, just look at the numbers that they've put up. So I'm good with Kellen Moore, but I feel like the judgments on Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy and probably even Dan Quinn to a certain extent are really all going to come down to January. We've seen them at different times perform at a level where you're like, oh, I can see why these other teams are bringing them in for interviews and things like that. But it's got to be what's there when you're playing another elite team, which could be on the road in the postseason. What's the game plan there? How do you, overcome whatever they're trying to do? Because you're going best on best. So that'll tell me a lot more. But as it is right now, I mean, I think I have no issues with Kellen Moore.
Spoonie?
Well, I want to ask, what's your confidence level right now? I mean, I know right now we still have a whole month of December. Of course, January, that's when the big conversation begins. But what's your gut right now with what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys? The defense is being tied. We know they had the Legion of Boom, and now we have the Legion of Doom. With this defense, we possibly may have an addition with Odell Beckham Jr. I know that it is a plan B. James Washington is in place here. So with the way this team is forming, coming together, Tyron Smith coming back in a couple of weeks, is it too early to feel that this Cowboys team will make the Super Bowl? Or is it that you still want to see more?
Oh, I think they're right. I think they're in the mix. I mean, I just think that the NFL is wide open right now. So, no, the only thing that, even the penalties in the run defense, I mean, those are the two biggest concerns. I mean, that's what ended your season last year. But to me, if you just tell me that they're healthy, I think that they've got a great chance to make a run. I just think they have so many key pieces that you need. The big thing for me is that I felt that the Cowboys have had offenses good enough to win a Super Bowl in the last decade, but it's just that defense hasn't been there. And when I say defense, it's not necessarily just the talent. It's a defense that can be multiple and change from week to week. I mean, that's really, part of the genius of Bill Belichick. As great as Tom Brady was in New England, one of the great things that Belichick did is that every single game in the postseason and early during the regular season, he always had a little bit different plan. That's why he's always he's leaned towards more intelligent guys in the draft process because he needs a guy that 1 week can line up here and the next week do a completely different thing. And I think the Cowboys have that now with their defensive coordinator, the way that they're structured, the way that they are so multiple. I know there's a lot of fans that just, put, Mike at left end and just let him go, or at right end and let him go. But I think it's great that they move him around. They do different things like that. Now, he most of the time should be there, but I like the idea that they'll at least move him because the previous regime would just put him at right end and that would be it. And he'd still have some big games, but I don't know that you'd be maximizing what you can do, defensively. And so I think the run game stuff will figure itself out. I don't think that anybody should look at them as potentially being, they can get to a level where they're the best run defense in the league. They don't need to be that. They just need to be like middle of the pack. If I think middle of the pack right now is like around $120, $125 given up rushing per game. When they give up like $125 or less, this year I think they're 5-0, and last year I'm pretty sure they were 10-1, and the only loss was that opener against the Bucs when I think they held them to like 50 some yards 2 years ago or whatever. But I think that they can be fine. They're just enough talent there that I think they can get that figured out, but it has to be out there. They have to stay healthy. I mean, particularly, you got to have Dak out there. You got to have DeMarcus Lawrence, Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. If you have those key players there, they can beat any of these teams.
Our girl Aisha in the building. Y'all might know her, maybe, if y'all watch the .com, the mothership.
Girls talk, boys talk.
Yeah.
Tune in.
She's big time now. She's at press conferences.
She's out here just making all the moves. She says, John, do you think Dak is taking the next step at the quarterback position? He seems like he's now putting all the tools together.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought he was through, the first 6 games last year, but it's like between then and then really the last couple of weeks, it's like one injury after another. And so because he's healthy now, even in that Packers game, a couple of those games when he first came back, I wondered if the way he was playing was kind of thinking about the hand a little bit, just because quarterbacks hit their hand so much, whether it's on another guy that's Russian's hand or on a helmet. And I don't notice that from him in these last few games. And so when he's not worried about that stuff and is just playing free, he's on a different level. I mean, that's the guy that the Cowboys know can take them to that next level when he's playing like that. So yeah, I mean, but that goes back to the health thing too. That's why I'm saying, like, if he stays healthy, he'll be fine. They'll get it figured out. And like I said, they'll be in the mix with anybody in that NFC playoff race. And then you get to the Super Bowl and you got to play Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, and you see where the chips fall. But just to get there, you're obviously going to have to beat some really good teams. And I certainly think he's capable of doing that. I mean, outside of Brady, I think he'll be the best quarterback in the NFC playoffs.
The one thing that I've seen over the past few weeks with him, 2 weeks for sure, is the command of the offense. And we saw this with Romo some when he got to the kills and doing different things. And sometimes that annoyed people, fan base or whatever. Oh, he's doing too much and whatever. And directly after the Minnesota game, we were in the post-game space. And I was like, be clear. He was doing all the changes. He was still running the ball, though. Some were passes or whatever the case may be. And the one thing that highlights for me is going back to the Giants game was the call and the kill and we did. It went to the speed option to the right. Here's the thing, though. The verbiage that he used typically signifies that you're running to the left. But he understood that. And if you watch that play in real time or you go back and look at the film, you'll see after he makes the calls, you'll watch the Giants defense kind of shift over. He knew he had him. And I was like, because we go back to the year when he almost threw 5,000 yards when Cobb was here. The arm and everything, that talent level, to me, walked through the door. And it was there. The injuries absolutely have set him back here and there, because even the 6 games last year, the calf was a bigger problem than was ever let on from this organization. And that's just kind of how Mike McCarthy works, I think. And I would love to hear that from you as well. Mike McCarthy's kind of put a cap on some of these things, I think, about things getting out to the media or whatever. And I'd love to hear what you think about that. But with the physical stuff with him now and what's happening, boy, I think we're just really starting to see the shining of the mental side all of a sudden. Would you agree with that, or something you've always kind of seen?
Well, I definitely started seeing it, a year ago. I mean, I thought the way he was playing those first 6 games were as good as I've ever seen. I mean, he he obviously was a good quarterback his rookie year, but there were just certain things that, he wasn't doing that you're not going to do until you've been in the league for several years. The interesting thing about, you talk about him going to the line and switching plays, and is that it kind of goes to what I said earlier about Kellen Moore calling plays. Like when a quarterback does that, though, whether it's Romo, there's that famous clip with the Cowboys. I was playing the Colts. I think is fitting here. I mean, I think you guys have all seen that one where Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday get into it because Saturday is like, we need to keep running the ball. And quarterbacks, when they're switching out of plays, and I know Romo did this a lot, and the coaching staff didn't necessarily love it. It generally goes to a pass play, and that's fine in certain situations. But let's say a playoff game, for example, it might be better suited that even though on this pass play you think you might be able to get 15, 20 yards, maybe you're better off handing it off and getting 5 or 6, eating up some more clock, and then moving the ball down the field, because not only is it helping your offense, but your defense is being able to rest, and you're kind of, slowing the game down and playing it into your favor, as opposed to you get up, you switch into a bunch of pass plays, boom, 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 you're 3 and out, punting it, a defense is back out there, and you're playing this high scoring game, So there's definitely levels to this, but that's where coaching comes in, I mean, if it gets to that spot, Kellen, Mike McCarthy, they have to talk to him and be like, Dak, we got to stick with the run here. I know this looks this way, and I know that you think you can make this pass, and that'll be there, but let's run it a couple more times and then hit him with a play action, and we'll hit him with another pass play like this, And I just think that one of the best moves that Mike McCarthy made was keeping Kellen Moore around, just because in his first year, to all of a sudden give Dak a new offense was not going to be smart in a pandemic year or not. Right. And so they've been able to, they have a good relationship. And it's grown, so they're on the same page with that stuff, and they have to be on the level now where if Kellen has to get loud with Dak and tell him, no, this is what we're doing, then he's got to do that. So, but that anytime the quarterbacks are going up to the line switching plays all the time, generally show me the quarterback that was doing that all the time, and it led to a bunch of handoffs. Like maybe there were times with the Patriots with Brady because their defenses were so good early in his career, but as he kept getting better and better, because let's be honest, Tom Brady was not the same quarterback at the end of his career that he was at his beginning. I mean, those first couple Super Bowls he won, I don't care what anybody says, he was managing games out there. And then he evolved into being, this monster that he can beat you throwing 50 times a game.
Thanks.
The Vikings game's a great example of Dak's pre-snap recognition too. The second Tony Pollard touchdown on the wheel route, Dak saw that pre-snap. That was an adjustment he made pre-snap, and he knew that was there as soon as he got up to the line. You could see Dak motion over to Pollard, do a little quick gesture, and he's like, "You're hot. I got this." Looked off the safety, and it was open. So, like, Dak's pre-snap recognition this year, he's always been a very cerebral quarterback. That's something that Troy Aikman's highlighted. Roger Staubach's mentioned. A lot of people have. Tony Romo's highlighted it too. But last year and this year, there's definitely a huge elevation in confidence level, the quickness of what he's doing, both pre-snap and post-snap. And post-snap, that he's elite because if teams blitz him, they're done. It's like 77% completion rate and like a 120 or something quarterback rating when he's blitzed. So that just shows you from a mental standpoint, Dak sees the game and very much has a command of the offense. So it's great to see.
Big facts. McCarthy and watching the culture, if you will, and how things are delivered to the media, with you being at the epicenter and whatnot, versus maybe the prior regime and things happen. Have you seen the cultural change there overall, or business as usual in your opinion?
Oh no, it's different. I mean, Mike McCarthy to me is it's kind of I compare him. I'm a big college basketball fan, so I compare him a little bit to like the way Duke and Kentucky run their programs, more so than Jason Garrett. Like Mike McCarthy's very player first program, whether it comes to injuries, giving guys rest, moving practice times around so guys can get more rest. Just the way he talks about how he manages their schedules around their flights, because we kind of get used to that. Yeah, of course, the Cowboys got a road game. They're playing up in DC, or they're playing New York or Philly or whatever. Well, that's not how he's been. He's been in Green Bay, and NFC North is all pretty close. And so he constantly is, gauging, how much time they have on these flights and putting that together with what their workout schedule is going to be and stuff like that. Like he's just, and again, I highly doubt that he would have been doing this stuff if this was his first coaching job, but he had all those experiences in Green Bay to pull from, where, I've heard the stories, the Matt Patricia taking over with the Lions. I'm going to be Bill Belichick, and we're going to have this hardcore training camp, runs everybody in the ground. Players hate him from day one. They're just like, what are you doing? Like, you're not Bill Belichick just because you worked with him. And it was just an epic disaster. And I'm just using the Patricia one because I'm from Detroit. And I know a lot of people that covered that team. Right. But go ahead and just take Patricia out of there, and I'll just go ahead and substitute in everybody else that's coached with Bill Belichick that's went on to get a head coaching job. It just kind of leaves you scratching how come not one works out. You can't, not one. There's not one. I love when I say that and people will be like, what about Mike Vrabel? Mike Vrabel was never a coach with him, but I'm talking about all his coaches. When they go to someplace else, they all go there, and to some extent or another, they try to be Bill Belichick. And that, one, it doesn't work unless you are Bill Belichick. And two, players nowadays, they're not going to be on board with that. Like, that's not going to happen. And so that's why I think Mike McCarthy is a good fit for really the way that where this team is at right now, because I don't know if he could have been like that in 16, because you have key guys and Dak and Zeke that are rookies that, it's different when you're a veteran now. These guys can help like police themselves. They don't need to sit there and have a coach, yelling at them about, not showing up to meetings on time, things like that. Like, the players hold each other accountable because the locker room's loaded with guys that have been there and done that. So because of that, I think that feeds into also the way McCarthy kind of runs it here. That I don't know if he would run that if, let's say, he was in Carolina.
10-4.
So with Mike McCarthy, now since he's been here, this Cowboys team has faced a lot of adversity. We're talking about losing Dak Prescott the first game of the season, and he was still able to keep this team intact with Cooper Rush to win some games, right? And do you feel that he's earned enough to cool down the Sean Payton conversation for the way this team has gone so far, how this team so far is being built, going towards the right direction? I mean, this is a completely different team compared to what we saw in the Garrett era, in my opinion. So do you think Mike McCarthy has slowed that conversation down? They trust him. Take this team as far as you can from years to come?
I really can't say that with 100% certainty, just because of the fact that if they go and lay an egg in the wild card round of the playoffs and get knocked out the way they did last year, whether it's fair or not, because everything you brought up is completely true. I mean, he shouldn't have to worry about any of that stuff, but just because of the fact that he was hired to take this team, again, I'll use the Patricia thing. Like, Patricia was taking over for Jim Caldwell. He was not taking over some dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Mike McCarthy's taking over for a team that was not like the Cowboys where, hey, they're 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins. Mike, we need you to get it to what it was in Green. No, it's because they wanted him, because he's been there and done that and can take a team that was winning 8-9 games, but losing in the first round or losing the divisional round, and he could get them to, NFC Championship game. So depending on how they play, I'm not going to say definitively, oh, he loses this, whatever, but depending on how they play in the playoffs will be a huge part of this, the whole evaluation process and the way everything goes. But I will say, I mean, every day that goes by this year, I mean, not just with the Cowboys, but just stuff that I hear. I mean, the Peyton Manning meter just keeps going down. The Sean Payton, keeps going down and down, because one, I think even he's starting to look at other spots because he's not seeing it there as much. You hear things about Arizona or the Chargers, things like that. I think those are more likely now at this point than Sean Payton with the Cowboys. And one of the things I keep coming back to with that is this draft and develop program is going to give up major draft picks to get Sean Payton. Like, Sean Payton's great and all, but is he that much better than Mike McCarthy that you're going to give up really the primary way that you add talent to your roster? And then he's going to come in and he's going to have say over the roster, when people like me argue the best thing that you have in the organization is Will McClay. Like, you're going to do all of that? Like, I don't, it just seems like a lot. I mean, it's the Cowboys, anything's possible, but that just seems, I don't know. That doesn't kind of track with what I've seen from this team and this organization since I've covered it.
The
Do
other
you think
side,
we re-sign Tony Pollard? I know that's hard to say because his market value has obviously increased dramatically this year.
Sign him now. Like, just do it now.
So I believe that if they made a deep playoff run last year and let's say lost an NFC Championship game or obviously in the Super Bowl, I think Amari Cooper's back. I think that because of how things went in the playoffs, you can do changes to a roster. So while I sit here and I would think, yeah, there's no way they would let him go, franchise tag him if you have to, they got to keep him in the building. If they get to a level where, let's say in this next, back end stretch of the season, it looks like the back end stretch of last season. And then they go into the playoffs and they look like the same team you saw against the 49ers. I'm not saying that that's Tony Pollard's fault. Let him walk. But I'm saying that you really evaluate your situation a lot more and go, all right, what do we need to do to finally get over this hump? What kind of changes? And those changes might involve giving money or an investment somewhere else where all of a sudden you can't bring back Pollard. But I'd maintain that even if it got to that level or another team, they were worried about another team signing him, I think they do the Dalton Schultz thing and give him the franchise tag for a year and then reassess after that. I don't know, man. I just don't think we've seen Tony Pollard's best. I think those days are still ahead of him. I'd be cautious about giving him some long-term deal. Don't get me wrong, just because of the position. Right. But I can't see letting him play for anybody else but the Cowboys next year.
The coaching and things that are evolving in the Pollard situation and how it plays out. Obviously, Zeke's been a hot topic, right? In where his contract is, what's happening, what's going on. And I've completely pounded the table. I think Zeke definitely matters to this team, but it's in the contract of what we're doing this year. I do think very much so it's a restructure to keep him here. Would you see a depending on how things play out, could it be a Zeke or Pollard, or do you think they can get them both back here?
Oh, no, it could. It could definitely. But I wouldn't rule out Zeke trying to do something to help out because I do think he genuinely likes playing in Dallas and he likes playing with Tony Pollard and, his best friend's Dak Prescott. I mean, those things factor in as well. And I don't know. I just have seen a Zeke that he's just different than he was in 2016 and 2017. Like, I don't think that he really even cares anymore about the rushing yards. And I think he definitely did early on in his career. I mean, how could you not, I guess, when everyone's, you get the rushing title your rookie year, everyone's comparing you to Emmitt Smith, so, but I just think now he's at a point where I just want to be part of this team winning a Super Bowl. I want to be able to say I won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys, obviously being a national champion at Ohio State and obviously a ridiculous high school player. I really get the sense that that's where he's at with this. So I could see him being able to think, maybe in a way, I'm not saying apples to apples here, but kind of a way, let's be honest. DeMarcus Lawrence did the organization a favor with that contract he did in the offseason, doing 3 years, $30 million. I mean,
I thought he was going to be more mad because he did that and didn't get Randy back. I thought he was going to blow a gasket.
No, I know. But he wasn't. I mean, it was kind of, and I don't know if that's because he knew what they had in Micah, because obviously, he exploded on the scene last year, but then also with the Dorrance Armstrong. And then the fact that, hey, we're going to go out and sign Dante Fowler, maybe all of that stuff factored with him. There's just a lot of things there that maybe that smoothed it over. But yeah, I mean, like I said, he did them a huge favor with that deal. And so who knows, maybe Zeke does something like that, but I'll be honest with you, if he doesn't, hey, that's on him. I mean, hey, when he got that contract, he jumped. Yeah. I mean, when you're going to get a deal like that, I mean, who's going to turn that down, so, yeah, it hasn't been a great contract for the Cowboys, but it's a great contract for Ezekiel Elliott.
Yes, I like that because I'm sorry, BJ.
No, you're good.
Because it's not the same. But the other day, I heard the comments about Dak Prescott and the tight end. So we all saw the tight ends once Hendershot scored that touchdown. They all went inside the Salvation Army thing. But what I loved about it was the interview Dak had with that, and he says, "Don't worry about it. We all spoke about. We all have enough money in this locker room to pay for these guys' fines." So when you say what D-Law did, took a pay cut for this defense, and I look at with how Dak addressed that fine, like, don't worry, we're gonna take care of the in-house family. I would think that Zeke would do that for Pollard. If he don't care about the rushing yards moving forward, he just cares about this team win and how close he is with Dak Prescott. I could definitely see Zeke take a pay cut similar to what D-Law did just to keep Pollard in.
I'll share this story with you guys. Depending on how the season goes, I'll eventually write about it. But
major key alert.
Yeah, we didn't. No one really talked about this. No one really talked about this because you said the thing about Dak. I was going to bring this up. So, there was. I'm not going to say finger pointing, but there was a lot of complaining on the defensive side of the ball in the locker room after that Packers loss, as you probably can imagine, losing that 28-14 lead. And just the way that you could easily take it as a negative, the way that there was some of this arguing going on, the way that Dak walked over there to calm the whole situation. I'm just watching this. I'm just like, how many other quarterbacks are doing this especially the veteran quarterbacks, where I could see a lot of them after a loss like that being like, I just want to get on the bus and get out of here, whatever. And so he goes back to his locker and he sits down, and you can tell that tensions are still pretty high. And so some defensive players are arguing about they can't find like their phone charger, and it's starting to get heated again. And just the way Dak from his own locker just starts stepping in again, he's just like, what do you need? What do you need? I got this phone charger. I got this phone charger. Which phone charger do you need? I got them all in here. But like, just the way that there's just so much stuff he does behind the scenes that people just don't even see, to like try and, just help out in like areas that, I'm sorry, like you can sit there and say, oh yeah, no, my high school quarterback, that whatever. Yeah. Or even your college. Like these are professional athletes. These are professional people. Dak Prescott is making a lot of money. He is not being paid to worry about that stuff, and I'm just going to say, I've been around some other quarterbacks. They would not have been doing all of that.
Not
They're
playing
just like
Call of Duty or
no. It's just like watching how that whole thing went down. And the reason why I'm like, I'll share some of it. But the reason why I was thinking about going back to it, just depending on how this season goes, we could really look back on that Packers game of how, it was awful for them at the time, but it could have been also a huge wake up call that springboarded them to, having just an epic season. So it was interesting because just, I don't know, just the fires he's trying to put out that just, those aren't his responsibility.
He was whacking them all a different way.
Right.
Like ends.
Right.
The one thing, and obviously in Cowboys Nation, boy, Stephen Jones, he gets burned at the stake and everything else, but we're watching how this thing plays out. Is it ultimately time to say, maybe Stephen was right in your opinion on a lot of things, or
go get Odell Beckham and I'll tell you.
Do what?
Go get Odell Beckham and I'll tell you.
Oh,
okay. Because I've always maintained that they're sitting there talking about how they're keeping this salary cap space and doing these things. Jerry was saying it back in training camp, when we were asking questions about how, man, Dallas Cowboys, you guys got some of the most cap room in all the NFL, and talking about how, but what if something happens during the season? We'll have the availability to be able to add a player and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, right now you certainly can make the argument, and hey, let's be honest, when Steven's running the show, it's not going to be like Jerry. I mean, he'll do a radio interview a couple of times a week. He's not going to be talking after every game outside the locker room. He's not going to be getting involved like that. And I could see him, there's obviously things with the cap that people don't like, but he certainly listens to a lot of people around him. Will McClay being a big part of that. And then even Mike McCarthy, listening to his coach, like, Steven doesn't have the ego that Jerry does. And so he's going to be willing to listen to other people about things. And so, when people say the Cat Boy stuff and all that, so I get that there's the negative side of that, because you want to add these big time players and stuff like that. There's also the other side of where that's being smart, because it's able to have you keep your key players. And if you're drafting as well as the Cowboys have, you want to have that as an opportunity. I'm just saying, as a reporter and really as a football fan, I prefer someone that's going to be willing to listen to everybody and not act like they know it all. And I'm not saying that Jerry does, because I do think there was a time when Jerry felt that way, and I don't think that time's like that anymore. I think he listens to people around him more than he ever has. But I just think that that's important, as opposed to just being like, no, we're going to do this exactly how I want to do it and whatever, especially when you're not winning like Super Bowls. You got to be willing to, pivot. When Mike McCarthy comes in here and says, hey, running this base 4-3 and just, doing this defense because this is what we've always done. This isn't going to get it done in January. We're going to have to be more multiple. We're going to have to draft different players, things. Being willing to adapt to that and change your defense like that, I mean, I think that's a good thing.
And the one thing I was talking about, take the Cowboys out of the equation. I try to talk to Cowboys Nation in this realm. Whatever, name your favorite GM. They have to think about, not about, because as fans, we think about this year only, what we have, what we can do. But they have to project 2-3 years down the road of where the money has to go. And the problem for Stephen Jones at times is how he does and handles free agency. So I understand the frustration. But on the other side, as drafting, you're looking at the CeeDee Lamb contract, the Diggs contract, more importantly, even maybe in this offseason, you have to do certain things. But it's being creative within those spectrums when we see Kansas City and what they kind of go do in different teams. So it's within those spectrums what you have to do. The question on the back end is you're asking about, or as you're saying, how he listens. It's always intriguing about Willie McClay and how much, and maybe you can enlighten us here for sure. We know he builds the board. Great job. His history from the, coming in the Arena Football League with Desperados and what he did. He's worked his way up and talks about, hey, I want to get Jerry this, and I'm going to stay here. My kids are in school, blah, blah, blah. He's had opportunities. Teams have tried to poach him here and there. And I understand that they listen to him. They always like change his title, give him another bag to make sure he's good to go.
Right.
And I was like, hey, we should all want the same job he has because he's always getting the bag. He's never in trouble, and he's never feet to the flame. Because does he get to sign the guy? No. Does he ultimately not get to sign the guy? But within the construct there, is it just about, hey, we want to sign the guy this kind of money, give us a list, or is it deeper than that when it comes to McClay?
Yeah, I don't think he's getting involved as that much on the money side. I mean, his greatest strength is his talent evaluation, and then number two, and some would argue his greatest strength is actually probably the people skills of having to, you're with these scouts who are always seeing all of these players, and that's their job all the time is to be watching these guys. And then you have coaches come in there and say, no, I want this guy. And you have to be able to sit there and kind of bring them together to find, okay, what's really best for this team? Who's the best player? And when he's been allowed to do that, to just get the best player, that's when they've had their best drafts. Now, let's say we'll use Odell, for example, well, he's coordinating all of that. Now, he isn't going to be the one that does the contract, but he's the one watching him. He's the one that's going to look at the tape, talk to other people around the league, see where Odell's at, things like. So it's not just with the rookies; it's going to be with the veterans too. They're not going out signing guys, whether it be the J-Ron Curses or trading for Hankins or going out and signing Dante Fowler if Will McClay doesn't think that they're going to be a good fit too. But that's the thing about Will McClay. He's got a good relationship with Mike McCarthy. He's got a good relationship with Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore. So I do think that there's a possibility that what happens is that when Steven takes over the team, Will becomes the GM. I mean, they're all very close. He's very close with the family. And I think that would make a ton of sense. I mean, to keep him in the organization, you don't want to lose him because he's just been so valuable. The one other thing I was going to say, going back to your previous question about Steven, though, is, it kind of goes back to the Mike McCarthy thing and how I said that they'll be judged on the postseason. Everything looks pretty good right now, but let the Eagles win the Super Bowl, kind of doing what the Rams did, where they went all out and got super aggressive. That'd be 2 years in a row that happened. If you're not at least thinking about changing up your process a little bit after that, I don't know, because you got to ask all those questions in the offseason about the Rams and the way they did it. And are you guys going to do it? And maybe the Rams are a one-off. They got lightning in a bottle, got all these good players together, and it worked. And that really hasn't happened that much in the NFL. But if it happens back-to-back years,
right? Hold on, but the Bucs did it too, right? Because they got Brady, then they added Brown, they added Gronkowski, right? They kind of did it as well. So there's a little bit of a trend here. If the Eagles walk through the door, right? That's a phenomenal point.
Because the Eagles have been complete opposite, with what Howie Roseman's done has been, obviously they haven't drafted as well as the Cowboys. So they've needed to go out and get Bradbury's and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay and Hassan Reddick and these guys. I mean, he's done a great job. I mean, some people are better than others, going back to me being a Florida State fan. Mike Norvell, their head coach, hasn't been a great high school, recruiter. But he's been phenomenal in the portal. I mean, if your top 15 players at Florida State right now, probably 10 or 11 are probably transfers, that he got out of the portal. Some guys are better at doing things than others. And clearly Howie Roseman seems to know how to get guys in free agency and trades. I mean, and I said all those moves and I didn't even name what will be the best one if they win it. His A.J. Brown trade was just phenomenal on draft day or whatever. So he's done so many moves like that if they win doing it that way, then I think you look back and you're like, man, maybe we need to be more aggressive in March.
Interesting. Would that be
Bradbury move too was huge for them?
It was definitely, because not a number one for the Giants, but you put him on the other side from Slay. Now you got a little. Now you're cooking a little bit, right? First and foremost, John, you've been here for an hour and 18 minutes. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I'm not going to push, but I ain't going to push you out of here. Look, you got now at this point. Now you're just family, and now you're just here for the ride. We got somebody on the back end, so whenever you need to leave, you say, "Hey, we got to go," because we haven't got to the Colts yet. So if you want to give the Colts diatribe and get out of here, cool. We usually work for about 2 hours.
No, I'm fine. I'm good. It's good.
Oh, say less. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, y'all heard John. John said, "Man, this feels like family here." Man, I'm here for. I'm going to rock with y'all for another 40 minutes.
It's because I was impressed with that intro.
Shout out to producer Jay.
Now he's really running up my tab on Christmas. Dadgummit. So I'll tell you what, before we go to the Colts, We got a couple of people in the background. Let's get them up here, see if they got a question, and let's go in there. Shout out to everybody in the chat as well. We appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all smash the like button, hit the sub, the whole nine, and share the stream. It's free 99 to share. First and foremost,
real quick too, before they jump
ahead.
in to the chat, I put John's Twitter handle in there.
There it is. Yeah,
click it. You should already be following him, but if for some reason you forgot,
if you don't,
you got a new Twitter, already. Whatever. If you haven't done it, go ahead and follow him now because he's great. So give him the respect and appreciation. Thank you.
And go sub to the Athletic. It is $1 a month right now. Do y'all just run a promotion?
Yeah, we were just running one. I think it went back to its normal price, but yeah, it was for a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't take advantage. I'm already there. So, but go over there. There tons of great content. John's there. You don't want to miss out on what he's talking about. Make sure you go to the Athletic for sure. With that being said, now here we have the toxic Tom Downey burner account. Earlier this year, during the Dak downtime, he was Cooper Rush for us, by the way, as he would come up here and speak on Fridays. I
see that.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, hope your Friday's going well, good sir, as always. And then after we got Space on the back end coming up real quick. Shout out to my guy Space in the building. Go ahead, man. If you got the question there. Well, how's your Friday? Let me start there.
Oh, it's been great. Over Thanksgiving, my dad's a Giants fan. So the first half, he was having a great time. And then reality set in on him. And I just kind of looked at him. I'm like, and he hates the Lawrence Taylor comparison. I baited him a little bit. I'm like, yeah, he looks like LT, doesn't he? And he just looked at me like, no, he's not LT. And yeah, it was great.
Well, did you see the LT tweet about Parsons? Calm down on my team or anything? Did you catch that?
I don't
check his timeline.
I would say to him, I don't pay attention to irrelevant boomers anymore. Like LT, you were cool when Enron was still around. We're now. He's salty though. I mean, you see Micah, he's got that earring with the cross on it too. He's doing it. I know Micah knows what he's doing.
Well, he showed up in Minnesota with his purple suit on. Micah knows what he's doing.
And of course, Micah said, if I get one, I get two, and it's Thanksgiving, I got to go get seconds. Fair. What's your question, my guy?
Oh, well, first off, all this praise for Stephen Jones and Kellen Moore and all this just sobering me up right now. But my question for John is, does Stephen Jones know how hated he is by the fan base right now?
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because, he's just not a social media type person. There's plenty of people in the organization that will talk about how they're not on social media, but like, I bet you at least check it and things like that. Now, I will say, so Jerry, Steven, and some other people in the front office, they do get a printout. I don't know if it's daily, but every couple of days of, Twitter things that, are being written and people are saying, but I doubt that gets into the comments and stuff like that. And so because of that, I don't think he really knows for sure, unless maybe he's got a family member or two that are on Twitter that are telling him. But I think the Twitter thing is what's taking it to the next level. I mean, just seeing him, some of his faces turned into memes and stuff like that. I don't think he has any idea. That's why you say that. I think I'm gonna talk to him about that one day. I'm gonna see what he thinks about that.
There's some parody accounts that are really funny.
Well, we're gonna bring that up here in just a second. Tom, another one. Look, I'm gonna get you out. I'm gonna drop you down. Bring up Space. You got something else before I drop you down?
No, that's good. Bring in Space Cowboy, who is very good with Stephen Jones. So
he is, and he is. All right, brothers, stick around. We got you on the back end. And of course, it's funny because this particular gentleman has a parody.
Well, until Elon bought Twitter.
Well, they still didn't reinstate it, huh?
No, not yet. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it was. Listen, I think it had its fun. That's definitely for sure.
And look, and we definitely did during the spaces and different times, and him responding to whatever the Stephen Jones account you might have happened to run into on Twitter was definitely this guy right here. We're just going to out you now because of the things that happened over the time. He would come to the spaces and talk and due diligence and pie and so forth. It was a fun time. Hopefully, I really do hope they do bring it back. You did a great job running it, Space.
Thank you.
Once again, every single Friday, you know how it is, man. How's your Friday going, brother?
Going pretty good. We got ourselves a little fun game upcoming. Hopefully, we finally win on Sunday night. But having a good Friday, so can't complain.
Well, the floor is yours. I'll be right back because I think Producer Jay just said, I need my Christmas list right now. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. I'll be right back.
I'll go ahead and ask. But John, you do fantastic work with the Cowboys. I just want to first say that. And thank you so much for what you do. So I think you did talk on it, but this is something that I've seen a lot of people mention is that I understand that Steven isn't as hands-on per se as Jerry was in the past. And I think one big thing that I've been circling around is that would Steven be one of those guys, like I think we talked about it with Will McClay, right, where he might give him that title of general manager? Is he one of those guys that are like, I'll take that from my father? One of those, or he's like, I'll delegate that authority? Is he one of those types of managers?
I think he'd be more likely to delegate. I just don't see that. You know, I mean, Jerry's just such a rare person. I mean, there's just not many people. I mean, God, I just like, okay, for example, you know, that 1957 photo of him in front of North Little Rock High School, for him to just come out of the locker room and just start answering questions about that, I just don't. I mean, well, I mean, you could read in the Washington Post story. I mean, they say in there that they've reached out to 31 other owners to talk, and he's the only one that did for the story. It just, he's just a different person for good and for bad. I mean, he just, you know, that just, I don't see anybody that's like that, you know, and I just think Steven is much more likely to, you know, delegate to whether it be, you know, Will McClay, whoever the head coach is, you know. I've always thought that he'd be willing to hire a head coach, you know, that might be a little bit more of a personality, because he wouldn't mind with them, you know, maybe being the face of the Cowboys if it's the, you know, one of the best coaches in the league. Whereas Jerry, I've never felt like since Jimmy Johnson, he wanted to bring in another. Now, I know he did with Parcells, and obviously that didn't work. And since then, you know, you've had the Wades and then Jason Garrett. And I think him and Mike McCarthy are probably the perfect pairing for what Jerry will have. And again, it goes back to earlier me talking about Sean Payton. That's where I just don't know how well that whole thing would gel with the two of them. But yeah, I just think that Steven is just, he'd be far more likely to delegate. And then the other part of it is just, it won't be one person, like where everything just falls with Jerry. Like I see, you know, Steven will be that with football, but then on the marketing side, you know, Charlotte's going to be involved. Jerry Jr. is going to be involved, and they all are right now, but I think it all ratchets up to another level, you know, at that time. And when that happens, then I think Steven will just be focused on football. So that's why I think he's more likely to hire a GM. I also think that, I mean, as awful as it is to say this, like he'll probably be the one that puts Jimmy Johnson in the Ring of Honor, you know, like it should have been done a long time ago, but maybe that's, you know, one of those things that he's got to be like, my dad should have done this and he didn't, but I'm going to do it. You know, stuff like that I don't know. I just think he's got things that are obviously similar. It's his dad, but there's a lot of differences too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely feel like, as much as I have a disdain towards Steven, because I feel like there are moments where in the media he'll be a bit hypocritical. And again, I understand that, like, I'm not saying this is easy, 110% not saying it's easy, but there are moments where he's like, okay, well, you only go after these guys for playoff runs, but then, oh, well, we don't get those guys because at the end of the day, pie or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, I always felt that, like, he wasn't one of those guys that's like, I want to do everything. Even years ago, it kind of felt like that. So it's kind of good to kind of hear that. But I think that's really what a lot of fans are upset about is, okay, when he steps in, is it going to be business as usual or even more cheap? And I think that's kind of what a lot of people are scared about.
Yeah,
which understandably.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see that part of it. I just, the way I look at it with the salary cap, the way it is, I mean, there are certain ways that you can maneuver around it. But it just doesn't stand out as much, I feel like, when he's being cheap compared to, let's say, you know, you're a Major League Baseball team and you're the Yankees and you're not spending, and everyone's like,
absolutely.
You're printing more money than anybody. How are you not doing this? And hey, you know what? Maybe it does get like that with Steven at a point where he feels like there's a missing piece, and let's say Dak's still the quarterback or something like that. And maybe he changes and maybe he adjusts to the times, and maybe he, you know, gets people around him. They're like, no, we got to do this. We got to be more aggressive in the offseason. This isn't working. I think he'd be willing to listen to that, because, you know, at the end of the day, I just don't think he'll care as much about the, you know, if I say this, I can sell more t-shirts. If I do this, I can do what, like, I just don't think he just doesn't come off as caring about that stuff as much as his dad does. You know, I think that he'll be more focused on, I just want this football team to win. And if it wins, I'll get the accolades I deserve. If it doesn't, well, there's going to be more parody accounts.
No, 10-4. A lot more parity because that's where we're at. Let me get our next guy, Coach Cowboy, up here. Colts, how are we doing this Friday? First,
how y'all doing? Hey, it's been great, man. What's up, John? Man, I follow all your news, man. I get all my
Space, chill. I'm gonna bring you back up, okay, Space?
I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Go right ahead there, my guy.
Oh no, man. I'm just chiming in, seeing how y'all doing, man. Finally was able to break free from the wife.
Oh, well, I mean, it's hard this season for sure. It's very hard
You know
this season. Yeah, it's very hard this season.
I tell you.
Man, shout out to Rod Tuck in the Belt CFO. Was good.
Our guy Samuel Rowe, best rapper alive, says, I have a question for John. Why are Cowboys press fans and content creators so much smarter and better looking than their NFC East counterparts?
From his lips to God's ears.
I've been wondering the same thing. So, good question.
John, do you have an answer for that?
I mean, I really don't, man. I don't. I'm trying to think of my NFC East counterparts. I don't really have anything for that.
Here's the thing: geography lottery. That's why. How about that? We'll just go geography lottery. We're just around the way, and we like the star. I don't know. The star just looks better.
Yeah.
We'll just go with that.
We do our due diligence.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean,
that is one I hear a lot.
Yeah,
John, I have a question actually that Nick's brought up on our Wednesday show. So Kevontae Turpin, phenomenal get for the Cowboys this year. He's been in the top 5 in punt return and kick return yardage. Have you noticed a little bit more hesitancy the last few games from him, or maybe is it possibly coaching because we've had special teams penalties where maybe they're asking him not to be as aggressive? Have you noticed anything with Turpin the last few games that is different in terms of when he's electing to return and when he's not?
And it could be some coaching. I will say a few weeks ago, he got hurt pretty bad on one of those returns, and I saw him back by the trainer's room, and it just for him to sit down, like how difficult it was. I mean, there's just some stuff I've seen in the locker room where I'm just like, I understand you guys get paid a lot of money, but why do you do this? Like, just the stuff that they do to their body. I'll never forget the one time going to that locker room, seeing Romo's hand after he hit it on a helmet. And I mean, this thing's like 4 times the size of a normal helmet. I mean, it was disgusting looking. And just the fact that then they're playing next week. But no, he looked to be when I saw it, I told another reporter, I was like, there's no way he's playing next week. He can barely sit down, and he was out there. So to your point, the injury stuff could be part of it. I mean, I'll say we were out there yesterday and the day before, and he was returning because most of the stuff they let us watch is special teams. They're not going to let us watch during the season. They won't. We're not going to get a lot of team drills or anything like that. It's mostly individual and special teams. He looked fine, and I know that Faso wants to be aggressive. So I don't think that they're telling him to be less aggressive. It could be maybe just something with him. Maybe he's a little hesitant. Maybe playing in 8 different football leagues, one after another. Maybe it's catching up with him a little bit. But
okay, that's my point. That's where I was at.
Yeah, I'll say I thought if you would have told me from what we saw in the preseason to now, I would have thought he would have taken at least 1 to the house at this point. So hey, maybe that's coming, and maybe it comes in the playoffs, and maybe it's a game changer in the postseason.
Maybe it's just a little downside.
The Colts are 31st in special teams DVOA, 31st in punt return special teams DVOA.
But yeah, the last 3 weeks, it just seemed different in what I was looking at from him. I'm like, maybe the little wall, USFL to where he's at now, what's happening, and maybe a little just recharging the batteries. I'm gonna chill, and then we're gonna get there. Of course, now the schedule makers, maybe not great. Not once but twice we had to do the whole 3 games in 12 days here, but neither here nor there. Now there is a running thing here. Shout out to our guy O, and O has a theory. I don't know if you heard this theory or not. Of
do you know about the Rowdy curse? Because it's a real thing. Do you know about
curse?
This, John?
In terms of since he's joined he's been a part of things, they haven't won. Is that
that's the official
mascot 1996. We didn't win a playoff game until 2009. 2009, Rowdy was not a part of the team that year. We won a playoff game. Rowdy is the curse. I'm convinced on it.
When I think of Rowdy, I will always think of every year around Christmas time, the Cowboys break up the entire team and they go to 4 different children's hospitals.
Right.
And Rowdy goes to one of them. And I happen to be at one that Rowdy was at. It's like 5 or 6 years ago. And I mean, these are some young kids, and they're dealing with stuff on all different levels. So some kids are in bed, other kids are walking around. and he walks around the corner, and these kids were terrified, just running from him. And when you think about, you look at his face, the way it is terrifying for like little kids. Kids were screaming, and I had to turn my head because I was laughing so hard. I'm like, yeah, great idea, guys. Bring Rowdy around, terrify the kids. Like they're already in the hospital. Like, but yeah, it's funny because I know some of the people that are rowdy, and I just the other thing that stands out to me is just like training camp's not so bad because I mean you're out in California, weather's pretty good, but man, I've been around where Rowdy's outside and it's in Texas and it's like 100 degrees out. You got to wear that costume, just sweating in there. Just seems awful. But I did not know the Rowdy thing until about the Rowdy curse until I moved down to Dallas. Us in the media, we point to Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram because he started covering the team. I want to say like around 97. So he's like a year or two off. So we always say to him, we're like, yeah, you're the curse, man. Like when you stop covering the team, they'll start winning again. And it's so funny too, because when he started covering them, I mean, you get that back end of the 90s, you know,
Right.
so you're still getting Emmett, you know, Deion, Troy, stuff like that. So you're thinking that, oh, you know, a couple pieces, whatever. And there's just no way you would have told him that. Yeah. Right.
It's funny though, because in training camp last year in Hard Knocks, Dak Prescott is talking about the mascots, and he was like, I think they're serial killers, like, and making comments. I'm like, same wavelength, buddy. I'm there. I'm right there. With you. And he tells the story all the time about he was going to training camp. He's on the back of a golf cart. A fan ran up to him and said, hey, we got to change our mascot's number. He wears number 0. We've never won a Super Bowl. We need to change it. And they changed the mascot's number that year and won their first thing. I know obviously it doesn't really make a difference, but in my head, it was just
it's fun.
If we had a mascot, or Rowdy at least changed his number to 6.
Big facts.
You know what's funny too about Rowdy is he's one of the only things about the Cowboys organization that's really a Cowboy. If you look at them, like we were talking earlier about the Vikings, the way that they play up, you know, their mascot and all that, that's part of their whole like intro and that. The Cowboys really don't play up them being the Cowboys. They don't do a lot of things that would make you think like the whole team is all about like the way Jerry has it. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like there's not even really the fans like that. There's some, but not like a lot that are dressing up like full cowboy outfits and things like that. And they really don't play it up. And that is by design because they, much like the stadium, you know, that they want to be very corporate and they want to sell not to just, you know, maybe people that are, you know, cowboy type people, I don't know, in the South or whatever, like being a Texas Ranger or something. They're trying to market to the entire world. And so they're not trying to be just like one thing or another. So Rowdy is really Rowdy. And then those guys with, I guess, the flags before the game that they have on the side and stuff like that. Other than that, they do not really play up. Like, think of how many shirts are out there that really like even have like a cowboy on them. It's usually the star logo or it says Cowboys. Like they really go out of their way to not go full in, like, you know, like it probably was, you know, like you said, Crazy Ray. Like I'm sure that there was a time in the Cowboys history where they played up, you know, Cowboys versus Redskins and all that. Like there's nothing like that anymore. I mean, there, you know, the times I've been in Washington and in that wonderful stadium, there's nothing about that would make you think that they're playing any of that up with the mascot. And there's other teams that, I mean, I'm telling you, nobody plays it up more than the Vikings.
Yeah. You know,
the Vikings used to have Ragnar riding on the field on his motorcycle. And that was actually really cool. But yeah, to your point, I mean, if you think about the Cowboys from a branding standpoint, the Cowboys brand is one of the things Jerry Jones is most proud of because the Cowboys are not America's team. They're the world's team. We're the most recognizable brand in the world. And when you think of the Cowboys, probably 99.9% of people will say the star is the first thing you think of. You don't think about a Cowboy mascot or anything Cowboy related, even though that's the team name. You think of the star.
Oh, I think that a lot of people, if they didn't know who Jerry Jones was, other than reading his name and knowing that he was the owner of the Cowboys, you would probably think that he wears boots, a big belt buckle, and a cowboy hat all the time, or something like you know,
Bum Phillips, right?
Like Bum Phillips, exactly.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, he wears cowboy boots, but I mean, you would never think like, oh yeah, this guy is, you know, the team is the Cowboys. So I don't know, but it is funny because if you took away Rowdy, there would really be almost none of that, you know.
Yeah, which is interesting, like going to games at, you know, Old Texas Stadium and touring that, and then over here with AT&T Stadium, Cowboys Stadium, and touring that. The one was a football venue, one is a what is going on here? I got Tuck coming in here with a question. John, well, drop the H though. Got to drop the H. But John, what's your thoughts on Barr return? Will be What's your thoughts on Barr's return? Will he
Damone Clark.
Will he get his reps back and stop Clark's momentum, in your opinion?
I think they'll go with more of a split and see how things go. I think they want Damone Clark to keep heading in the direction that he is, so they're not going to do anything to stop that. What I'll be interested in is, do we get to a game in January and all of a sudden Damone Clark's only playing like 15 snaps or something in the game because it's a playoff game and they feel more confident with Barr because he's been there, done that, and played in the NFL so long. That's the only part that makes me think that they might not. But if Damone Clark just keeps ascending and playing at a big-time level, well, then he'll make the decision for him. So I think that there's still some cards that have to be played there. And then the other thing is, too, is that, let's be honest, the Anthony Barr thing, it's a hamstring, and those are so touch and go. I mean, it's crazy. I asked him, it was last week. So it was a week after he had the injury. He said it was the very last rep in their Saturday practice. Very last rep, Saturday practice, before they're about to play the Vikings, his old team. Like, how crazy that is. He was just like, yeah, and it pulled, and I just knew there was like no way I was going to be able to go. Like the day, I mean, they were about to, get on the plane and go fly to Minnesota. That's when he figured out. So you just never know. He could be out there and they're starting him and he's playing 10 reps and all of a sudden it just doesn't feel right. Well, you're going to have to go with Damone Clark there. So I think that kind of factors in as well. But if Damone Clark keeps playing well, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
And again, going back to the draft and what happened, getting where the Cowboys drafted him, we were doing the draft coverage and everything. I was like, oh, love it. Red shirt year, hey, they did the red shirt in the 5th round, not the 2nd round. Okay, this is great. And then about 30 minutes after the pick, here comes Stephen Jones said, oh, no, he'll be back around week 10. And me and Spoon and were like, is he though?
Oh, there's no way. No,
we're like,
there's no way.
I mean, is a little hopium being sold here, maybe?
I'm telling you, hey, training camp, same exact thing. About 6 or 7 of us got Jerry off to the side after a practice, just talking. We were on the record, but there was no cameras around. It was just us with the recorders out. And he starts talking about how much he likes what he's seen from this LSU linebacker. So we leave that because he's talked about 10 different things. And I just go to, I can't remember who it was. It might've been Clarence, it might've been Todd Archer from ESPN. I was just like, he's talking about Jabril, right? Jabril Cox. And they're just like, yeah, had to been. I'm like, because he can't be talking about Damone Clark because he had just had that cert. There's no way, Next day, go back, ask Jerry, were you talking about Damone Clark or Jabril Cox? Oh no, I was talking about Clark. I'm just like, wait, really? Like he's really impressed you like that. Oh yeah, the leadership, all this other stuff, like and everything that's going on with his rehab work and all that. Like we think he can contribute like this year. And I was just like, it just came out of the blue. It was one of these questions where you weren't even asking Jerry specifically about either one of them. But when he said LSU line, it was one of those questions where you just ask him like somebody that stood out, like who's catching your eye, stuff like that. And at the very end, he said this LSU linebacker, and you're just like thinking, okay, he probably just doesn't remember Jabril Cox's name. That's fine, whatever. We'll go with that. But yeah, no, he was on Damone Clark, and they were excited about Damone Clark back in training camp, thinking that eventually at some point, he could contribute. Man, if you would have told me that day that Jerry said that Damone Clark would be on the field and contributing before James Washington, I would have been like, there's just no way that that's even possible, because James Washington had that foot the very first day of padded practices, and you're just like, oh, he'll probably be back middle of the season. And talking to him in the locker room, he's like, yeah, no, I'm getting there, but I just getting that trust. And being able to plant off of this foot. I have a screw in it now. I'm not used to that, like it's that, kind of with Gallup, it takes that mental side to kind of get over that hurdle that, hey, your knee's good, just go out there and play, and it takes some games to get you back to that.
We had a conversation on the show when we were doing our Cowboys Bears preview, and we were like, so it looks like Damone Clark's going to be active. We'll probably see him slow play. They'll integrate him in special teams, maybe get a couple snaps here and there. And then Anthony Barr went down and he had meaningful snaps and looked good. And I was like, well, so much for that. He looks good. Don't take him off the field now. Quick programming alert for those that are not paying attention. Appreciate you rocking with us. But the Pac-12 championship game, Utah is up 34-24 in the fourth quarter over number 4 USC. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, Massey's not happy. And going back to Clark, one of the key things early on, this was back in training camp, and Bones Fossil, I caught a clip, and what he talks about was they were in practice, they were doing their thing, and he talks about Clark next to him. He's like, hey, I've never played special teams. How do I do it? Tell me. And he was just really just engaging Fossil on that level. And Fossil's like, I might be misquoted. I'm pretty sure he said made the hair on my arm stand up about how intent he was, right? And I'm like, there's something there for this guy where he's at thinking about the injury, spinal fusion surgery, whatnot can't work, but he understood special teams. This is how I get here, right? Barr's in the, I don't even think Barr was in the building at that point, if I'm not mistaken. He might.
I don't think
he was. But just understanding where he was in the rehab and what was happening, and he was locked in that way. Kind of speaking back, and it made me think about it when you were talking about what Jerry had said and the leadership, right, and what he was talking about, to be over here and say, hey, I didn't really play special teams, let me know. And hearing Fossil say that, I was like, man, I like that temperament from the young man and where he's at. So,
well, yeah, and you don't know how long he even had the injury, because he said when we talked to him at rookie minicamp that he'd never even had an injury before. And it's not like he had this neck thing and is like said something to a coach or something. Nobody said anything. Right. He didn't say anything, but it was when he was at the combine and they did the medical checks and they were like, hey, man, this isn't, if you want to play, whatever, you're going to have to do this. I also kind of wonder this. It's not the exact, apples to apples surgery, everything, but the fact that Leighton Vander Esch went through something like that, I'm sure that's helped Damone Clark along the way, having him in the locker room, because they had a somewhat similar, spinal fusion type surgery. But yeah, he's very all business. Absolutely. Damone Clark.
John, I have a question for you about the tight end room. So obviously the young guns is what everybody's excited about. Fergus shot, right? Hendershot season. We have we have so many nicknames. The Road Dogs. There's so many nicknames.
Yeah.
Jon Schultz is kind of the forgotten man, and he's playing really well too. So the whole tight end room in general, and Sean McEwen coming in and being a significant blocker, lining him up at fullback and all that. The question is, there was a pretty clear shift where the Cowboys fully started embracing the young tight ends and going with that 13 personnel, and now we've seen 4 tight end sets. Obviously, that's probably a credit to Lunda Wells and what he's done in McClay and the staff for bringing in these young tight ends. But is there anybody in the organization or anything that you can put your finger on why they suddenly started embracing it? Was that they just wanted to see the young guys in action, and now they trust them and are opening up the playbook more to them? Or what caused that epiphany for the organization to say, hey, let's just get all of them out there because teams are playing nickel defense and dime defense, and we're going to go heavy and force them into base, and now we have the advantage with the more athletic tight ends versus their linebackers. Is there anything you can think of that maybe caused that?
I think for all of them, it's something individual that they've had to do, and I say that because if we go back to year 1 and year 2 of Dalton Schultz coming out of Stanford, he would not be getting these type of offensive reps. He just was not ready to have that type of impact, but he keeps ascending. And so he's gotten to a level where he's one of the better tight ends in the league, but he wasn't like that right away. And I'm not saying that Ferguson or Hendershot are, but they were able to take on what was being asked of them and kind of run with the opportunity. Ferguson really from day one had been really sound all around as a tight end, but Hendershot really started stretching things defensively. And when he started doing that in the passing game and opening up, the defense's eyes there, where he was becoming one of their more difficult covers, it got to the level where Kellen Moore, Mike McCarthy are like, we have to get him more packages. And so it just kind of grew from there. And then the other thing is, I just think that Dalton Schultz is a great leader for that room. I don't think that he's, it's a business. So you could see how some guys would try and hold things back and maybe not help guys out. And I don't get the sense that Dalton's been like that at all. I think he's really been the leader of that group. And then Lunda Wells, as you mentioned, I think he's been a great addition to that room. I think that those guys, I don't know, they've played well together. And I think even if you ask anybody in the Cowboys organization, they've exceeded their expectations. There's some luck involved with all this stuff too. Sure. It's not always going to be, we knew this guy was going to hit and this guy was going to hit. I mean, there's guys that obviously that doesn't happen with it. You think are going to have a bigger impact, and they really haven't. But I think that even the coaching staff would tell you that we didn't think that Hendershot and Ferguson were going to be this impactful right away. And then the other thing that's helped them is that they haven't been as deep as wide receivers. So you're looking for different ways to be effective. You want to establish the running game. If you're not getting the running game going with your 5 linemen, you're going to have to do other things and bring other guys in. And so that's led to them doing these, just kind of like, I don't think it was ever a plan that, hey, let's try Connor McGovern at fullback. It just gets to a point where you're like, hey, for us to run the ball, we got to put somebody back there. Hey, who here can play a little bit of fullback? Let's try some guys out and see where it gets. And then it leads to, hey, if this is what it takes for us to get first downs and on 3rd and 1, let's bring in Connor McGovern to play fullback, and it just kind of becomes, just naturally evolves into that.
Yeah. And, the thing for me when it comes to Hendershot, and our guy Mendoza's in the building. Y'all were kind of on point. Y'all were, kind of talking about him and whatnot. Indiana. I didn't know he'd be the blocker he was this year. And sometimes we talk when it comes to tight ends, you don't have to be great, just be willing. And how willing he is. And the first few games of the year, like he had like five penalties, right? And you've watched him kind of limit that. And then Ferguson in the blocking game. To be honest, we see Schultz getting elevated that realm as well, and blocking better than maybe we've seen in years past. And it's just infectious in what they're doing. And watching Schultz come from the knee injury, we wasn't sure what that's going to mean for him to come back through and kind of get through that, unlike what Zeke was able to do last year with the same similar injury. It's been you're right, very important, whether they add Odell or not. Even if they add Odell, I think that is going to be very important to what they want to do down the rest of the way in the stretch, because it just gives you options. And whether you're a manager at a business or a offensive coordinator, the more people you can rely on to give you options to get the things matters. So yeah, Hendershot and Ferguson, what they've been able to do. I was a big believer in Hendershot. I thought he was going to start number 4 when Sprinkle was still here and going into training camp. I said he'll be the number 2 outside of training camp. Hendershot blew me away in what he's been able to do so far. I'm right there. From an undrafted guy who almost went to Kansas City, stole him away from Kansas City. Saturday, going to be a great article, a great interview, by the way, on the .com. And hearing that talk and him, telling Reed, hey, I'm not coming. I'm going to Dallas. Probably going to make Cowboys feel pretty good about that. Probably.
I want to ask this. Who was in your opinion, who's the biggest steal of the draft between Damone Clark in the 5th round and Hendershot being undrafted?
I'm going to go with Damone Clark, because I feel like everybody in the NFL should have known that he was a good player. With Hendershot, I can see how people would be like, yeah, I don't know how well of a blocker he is. He can definitely stretch defenses and do things like that from the seam, and he's very athletic, and he can maybe grow into a good blocker, but that's probably not going to be right away. In a way, different position, but kind of how they were able to find Terrence Steele. There's things about Terrence Steele's game that you're like, this here looks like it'll fit in the NFL, but this over here, I don't know. It's going to take, and then you get him as an undrafted guy, and it's like, well, then he's a hard worker. He's first guy in, last guy to leave. All of a sudden he starts quickly elevating, follows Zach Martin around. They, together help him elevate his game. And so
white Gucci suit there.
There's just an inexact science there. Whereas with Damone Clark, I feel that's at least I feel like a 3rd round pick without that neck injury, maybe even a 2nd. And so I think the injury is the thing that scares teams off. And it's one of those things that I almost feel like the Cowboys see that and they're like, we're going to prove everybody wrong. Like, with Jalen Smith, they've done that plenty of times in the 2nd round, but yeah, Damone Clark, I just, for him to be back this year and in the level that he's at right now, I'm going to go with him. That's a good question though. It's tough. I'd go either way.
Yeah. I thought obviously prior to the injury, I thought Clark was a late 2nd, early 3rd. And, and here we are in him playing. And again, I never in him spinal. I'm like, cool. We got him. Cool. Next year in 40 snaps. Weird. Green Bay only 7, but then right back to the 40 snaps again. And watching him kind of develop is cool. Maybe the other side of that and how it's rolling with what these young tight ends are doing. And this is a little future casting. It's hard to tell. And we know the market for tight end with our guy up there signing and jumping ahead of the curve before Cowboys could get involved, that $14 million. Does this make Schultz expendable, or how is the feeling in the house with Schultz? Is it still very strong of getting him back in here once this offseason gets here?
Yeah, really, you can go back to Stephen Jones on his pie comments, because that's the way it's going to be, because that it won't be just about those tight ends. Those other tight ends will factor in, but it goes back to you asking earlier about Pollard. There's just so many moving pieces. Like, all right, so, it's kind of like with the Amari Cooper. It wasn't just, we're going to let Amari Cooper go, and then, you have Gallup. It's Amari Cooper, or you get Gallup, and then you can do the franchise tag with Schultz, or with, you do Randy Gregory. You probably don't re-sign Dorrance. Probably don't get Leighton Vander Esch and maybe another player. So there's just so many, moving pieces. And so because of that, I think it has to do with so if Tony Pollard continues to play well, he's the guy getting the tag. And if they feel like they can get by with these other tight ends, then yeah, I mean, especially if Dalton Schultz is trying to get, be one of the highest paid tight ends in the league. And he certainly might become that depending on how the rest of the season outplays in that, then they might have to move on from him because ultimately then he gets into a position where he's, kind of like Byron Jones, where we really like to keep you, but we're not gonna be able to pay you that, and we want to keep Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons and CD Lamb and some other guys. So I don't know. It's tough. I mean, sitting here right now, I don't know how they'll have the money to bring back Pollard and Schultz and Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis. I mean, there's going to have the guys that are just going to have to go,
And all of a sudden, nobody wants to be Stephen Jones. Hey, y'all remember the Cowboys Nation as he was talking about it? We're going through it. It sounds good on this side, but all of a sudden, you don't want those problems.
Well, I want to ask this one more question, if possible. So because you just said that it'd be hard to retain Pollard, right? So I know Malik Davis only played 4 games this year, but that Green Bay game, he was on point. Can Malik Davis be a factor in the decision making for Tony Pollard being re-signed?
He could.
Or Zeke, the decision.
Yeah. No, it could for sure. I mean, I was surprised they were giving him some big time carries in overtime of that Packers game. They certainly were showing their trust in him. I don't know if it'll be a major thing though. Just the stuff I've heard about Malik Davis, like I know they like him a lot, but it isn't on the level of stuff that I heard about Tony Pollard, early on, even when he might not have been seeing it on Sundays necessarily. They're just the upside that they thought they had there. They think that, he's a special back and that, they see him as a guy that can be the lead dog and get 20, 25 carries if they needed to. So it might, and it could also be one of those things where they could let Tony Pollard walk or move on and draft a running back relatively high in the draft. I don't think they're doing first rounds. I don't think they're doing that anymore, but maybe in the second or third round, they get another back that they feel like, hey, let's be honest, it's not fair to say it, but it's just the truth. I mean, that seems to be the way the league goes. I mean, how many Derrick Henrys are there? It seems to be you get a guy young and you put him in the lineup right away and you try and get everything you can out of him out of that first 4, 5, 6 years, and then you move on, and that's just kind of the way the position is. So it'll be interesting because other teams factor in, it's got to be what's the offers out there for Pollard,
Yeah. I mean, if the Cowboys are picking 32, there's a guy at University of Texas they might take.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But neither here nor there. Neither here nor there. My guy Tuck again from CFO Sports says, John, what do you think's holding Jabril Cox back? That's been the conundrum around Cowboys Nation for sure.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I would say, not knowing the exact medicals on where he's at right now, it would not surprise me if he's kind of in one of those situations where, let's be honest, those ACL injuries, those knee injuries like that, sometimes it takes guys longer than others to come back. And when I say come back, I don't mean being able to physically do things. I mean like the mental side of it. And he might not be 100% on everything the way that you need to be effective on Sundays. I always use the example of talking to some offensive linemen about how, hey man, when you're in college, like even the Zach Martin at Notre Dame, these guys, the college coaches make all their offensive linemen wear knee braces on both knees because they just want to protect against guys getting rolled up and things like that. And there's NFL linemen that'll tell you, I ain't wearing that damn thing because I know if you just put me in one of those and just a little bit that'll slow me down is that little bit that will get me out of the league completely. It's just going back to the tight ends. Part of one of the things that I think is working so great for Hendershot and Ferguson is that they're young and fearless. Like there was certainly we saw that with no better example than Zeke.
This good already.
For
Zeke,
sure.
Yeah, Zeke and Dak in 2016, right?
Yeah.
Like
young and fearless, don't know what they don't know. Hey, let's just go. I'm hurdling guys. I'm doing Euro step touchdowns like that.
Yes.
You're just like the coaches. Yeah, the coaches are just running that back, going, you shouldn't do that, but it was a great play. Like there's just a little bit of that where, and I felt like Jabril Cox was on that road, a year ago, but then you get that injury and who knows? And that doesn't mean, just because he's playing maybe not up to that level right now, that he can't still become that player and get to that level. And that's obviously a good good thing to have for the Cowboys. But I don't know. I don't know exactly why he hasn't maybe picked up where he left off a year ago before the injury.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of young and fearless, I do have a question as far as, do you think that as far as Dak Prescott's mobility, is that something that the Joneses don't want him to do, or is that something that he's choosing not to do as much?
No, I think he's choosing to be a little bit more. It's funny because I kind of roll my eyes at all I know everyone loves how, Josh Allen, look at him out there just running around, and it's just so great. And he's built like a linebacker. I'm just like, yeah, I heard all this stuff about Dak Prescott, and then all of a sudden you get these injuries where, and let's be honest with Dak, it's not like all these injuries he's had are because he was trying to truck guys. I mean, obviously the ankle, he probably needs to go down there and he can probably avoid that. But the hand, the calf, things like that. I mean, they're just, freak incidents that happen. It's not like the guy isn't working out. And I mean, Dak Prescott's in the best shape he's ever been. I mean, you look at Dak Prescott today, just look at pictures of him when he was a rookie and things like that. I mean, there's no question, or when he was at Mississippi State, this is the best shape that he's ever been in. So he's doing all that stuff, but sometimes the game gets to a point where you're just like, really, is it worth me doing that? Because then what if I go out there and I roll out to this, and then all of a sudden I'm out for another 6 games, or I'm out for the rest of the season? So there's going to be times where he does it, but then going back to being the rookie, being young and fearless, like, hey, I was trucking guys at LSU. I'll truck some guys here too. I'm not scared of this stuff. And he probably still isn't, but it's just the fact of what's the risk reward. Like all of a sudden I'm stiff arming somebody with my throwing hand, and now I'm out for the rest of the season. You got to weigh all that stuff, and you certainly got to weigh it when you're the $40 million quarterback. I mean, you're just so important to the success of the rest of the team that I just feel like he's been more calculated. And then also the fact that I just think he's become a better thrower. He's become a better, he just knows more about the game and everything that's going on, and the chess matches that are going on around him, that I'm wondering if there's a part of him that will maybe unleash that a little bit more in the postseason when it is win or go home. But yeah, there's no question you're definitely on it. He isn't being the same mobile quarterback that we saw early in his career. No.
Yeah, I think, and when it comes to Josh Allen, and I said this last year, and I'll down this hill. Josh Allen to me screams Cam Newton.
Yeah. Cam
Newton, same size, imposing his will, running the ball. And look, Cam Newton came in and broke the rookie passing record. He threw the ball well, like he did that before the shoulder got missed. Somebody couldn't throw no more. It's the same thing. And the Buffalo Bills, long-term for Josh Allen, in my opinion, they had to find a running game the right kind of way, whatever the case may be, and say, hey, look, you got to stop, because if not, his career will be very much so shortened like Cam's was. I think Cam Newton could have played for a long time, but because of the style of game he played, did things to him. Now, Dak obviously had and look, he wasn't even like trying to run over nobody when he got hurt, right? Let's be clear. Yeah. But it was, catastrophic.
Fighting for extra yards.
Yeah. Catastrophic, and you have to go back into your dime and your bag and think about what's going on. No different than against Washington. He's the daddy now with the stiff arms and all that good stuff. Yeah. It's just about being timing. And the one thing I say about quarterbacks, I look at, I ain't talking about Russell Wilson this year. Let's ride. I ain't talking about Russell Wilson this year. Okay, let's ride.
Let's cry.
Or let's
cry.
Yeah.
I like
that. Country. Let's cry.
Yeah. I'm not talking about him, but if you go back beforehand, he would run and get down, right? You look at I think Aaron Rodgers put maybe the best at it. A word, and you know what Aaron Rodgers does with his arm and what he does, but when he had to run, he would do it. It would be just enough to get down. And you have to find those realms. So I understand.
Mahomes does it a little bit too. And let me just be clear, I'm fine with all these guys doing any of that stuff once the playoffs start. I understand when it's win or go home.
Down.
You do what you got to do. I get it, but I'm just talking about those first couple of weeks of the season when Josh Allen was doing a lot of that stuff, and it was just like every show I listened to, all this stuff, it's just like, look at how much fun he's having. Look at all this stuff. I'm just like, you do know the season's over. Yeah. You do know the season's over if he gets injured, and if they lose him, they're done. And they have all these pieces, Von Miller and all this stuff together to win right now. And because he trucked somebody in week 1 and got a SportsCenter highlight, I'm supposed to be like, this is great. Don't ever change, and just like, don't change, and trust me, the game will change you.
Facts, and you don't change in 3 years from now. Josh Allen will be relegated. He can't throw. He's hurt all the time. Everything goes wrong. So I'm cool with Dak. As I always said about Dak, even outside of his rookie season, I like Dak with the read option stuff inside the 10. That's where it works.
For sure.
That's where it works. Outside of that, I don't need read run options with him outside of the goal-to-goal situations. if he needs to run and get escape, that's fine, but just get down. And obviously, he's able to get away within the pocket and throw downfield. Not even the Big Ben way, because Big Ben would do things behind there. He would take shots though still. And Dak's been very calculated, as you just said, John, in those realms. And I like that. And look, no matter what people want to tell you, the eye test, Shady McCoy, doesn't fly here with Dak and how he's throwing the ball. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. With that being said, Coles, if you got a question, Space, if you got a question, and then we're going to get here. He's been working for 2 hours. We got to get to the Colts still, and we're going to pivot and get up out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead, Coles. You good?
I'm good. Yeah,
all right, brother. We'll be on Space on the other side. Yeah. I got you on the back end. Space, go right ahead, brother.
No, I'm good too. I mean, I pretty much had all my questions answered. I mean, John, you do a fantastic job at what you do, and we greatly appreciate what you do.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that.
That part. All right, Space. We'll be on the backside here. Some different things to talk about on the Space. We'll get to it though.
No, I got you.
Peace. All right, for sure. Let's get to these Colts though, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to the Colts.
We can do it quickly too.
Quickly, yes, very quickly after 2 hours here. All right, we're going into this game. You see the Cowboys where they're at, what they've done the last 2 weeks: 8-1, 7-3. What they beat these guys are rolling in here. We know about Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, they're missing the right tackle. Spoonie, you talked about on the space. Their nickel corners out. Yeah. Defense has been very good for them. They average 15.8 points per game. What's your outset here looking at this game Sunday night for you, John?
This has been one of the toughest weeks for me covering the team because I'm just not interested in any of the storylines. And so I've really jumped in both feet on the Odell stuff just because I know it sounds awful to say this, but I'm in the media and I'm not on the team, so I don't care. But I really think they can commit 14 penalties, let Jonathan Taylor go for $150 and the Cowboys still win. I really do. Like, I just don't think that Colts team is of that level. Like, it'll be a way closer game than it needs to be. And I do expect the Cowboys to come out and try and start fast and kind of put them away. I mean, they would love to be able to get in that fourth quarter, and you got Cooper Rush playing, you got Jalen Tolbert getting some snaps, like a lot of that's Malik Davis, like you mentioned earlier. They would love to get to that. And I think that'll be the goal early on. But it's just like that Giants game. Like, I don't know, man. There's something about the way this team's playing right now that even if they're not playing their best ball, I feel like they can win this week. The Jags. I'm forgetting somebody. Who else they got? There's one other one in there.
Texans.
Yeah, Texans, right.
There it is.
That it's just like they're not going to have to play the absolute best. And that's something that for me, I don't worry about because I'm going to still write stories anyway, but they have to guard against it because you do that and you just kind of get by and get by and get by. Then all of a sudden, then you got the Eagles, and that game is going to mean so much on Christmas Eve. You're not going to be able to just turn it on. I don't think they will, at least. Maybe they will, but I doubt it. You're going to have to build up to that. So they have to still stay focused. There's still things they need to work on. But I just look at this Colts team, and it's just so much dysfunction from – it's one thing to just bring a guy out of the broadcast booth to be your head coach. It's another than, last week, the clock management issues and things like that. It's one thing to have clock management issues and you have this history as a coach in the league. It's another to have those issues. And then you're going to have guys like, man, what are we doing here? Like, I mean, it just, there's nothing to compare it to because you just have never seen that. So it's hard to look at the Colts. And then the other part of it is that they're coming off of playing Monday night. They're going to be on short rest. The Cowboys are on long rest because they didn't play since last Thursday. So they should be fresh. They're healthier. And then the other part I just keep going back to is, when we talked to Dan Quinn the other day, it's, he's going to get these questions. Obviously, they're facing a team that has Matt Ryan. He obviously knows a lot about Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
We asked these same questions last year before they played the Falcons. And keep in mind, this was coming off that Broncos loss where you were kind of like, woo, where's this season going? And they just throttle the Falcons, just destroy them. And so you're just like, are we still going to ask him a bunch of questions about how do you manage to contain Matt Ryan? Like, am I going to say that with a straight face? I can't because I just can't do it, So this has been a tough week for me to stay locked in on storylines. Yeah.
Flowing.
I mean, the Odell stuff has been the saving grace for me this week. If they would have lost against the Giants because of the run game or because of those penalties or something like that, I would have a different feeling. But just like I've watched that Giants game, I've watched that Bears game. Justin Fields is running all over the place. Great. That sounds great for whoever has them in their fantasy league, but like it's not changing the outcome of this game, So,
right.
I'll be watching obviously for the same stuff that we've been talking about, the penalties, the rush defense, because that stuff's going to have to be better in January, but I don't think it's going to have to be an elite level for them to beat the Colts.
Yeah, it's funny because my guy Joshua Parker's in the building. You talked about the Atlanta game last year. We were at the game because my guy was getting married. He had never been to a regular season game yet. He only did preseason. So in your very different bachelor party festivities was us going to the Falcons game in there, which at that time, they broke it later, but at that time, the most points we had scored in the first half ever in the Cowboys organization, and it was a fun time. He was lit, had a great time. We came back, got married, the whole nine. Salute to my guy Parker in the building. Interesting that you brought that up. I was able to see him in here and do that for sure.
It's a great game to go to.
Yeah, I mean, if it's your bachelor party last season,
yeah,
might have been the best game to go to. Now, me and Spoon, we was in the bill for the Eagles game. That was pretty good too. But boy,
you just don't want to mess around and you got all this stuff built up, and you go to that Raiders Thanksgiving game, and it's not just that if you go there as a Cowboys fans they lose, but you're watching the game and you're just like, are we really sitting here letting these refs decide it to this level? That's when I removed myself, because it wasn't like they just called a lot of penalties on the Cowboys. I mean, it was just penalty flag after penalty flag, and you're just like, Thanksgiving. You do realize that outside of the Super Bowl, this will probably be the most watched games, and I got to keep looking at these officials making another call, just like, can you just let these guys play? Those to me, I think of the most for the paying customer, because you spend all this money to go, you probably tailgate before you build up. It's like nobody from either team that likes anybody came here to see you throw 14 flags on each team. That's the part where you just let the guys play.
Facts. And that turkey, if you were watching it at home, is like, oh, this turkey in my belly bubbling so bad. But the Cowboys ended that this Thanksgiving. A little rough out the gate, but got there. Spoonie, all right, Cowboys, Colts, here we are. Right tackle up out of here. What you think, man?
Oh, well, my score doesn't change from Wednesday, so I'm sticking with 40-17 Cowboys.
40-17. Okay, all right.
Oh, did you want a score prediction? Sorry.
You're good. We'll end on your score prediction. How about that?
Okay.
Teaser alert. Professor O, Colts in the building. I know we're kind of rushing here a little bit, but lay it out for us.
Yeah,
I mean, you got something on the back end.
Well, Kenny Moore, he's been one of the best slot corners in the league. He's out. He hasn't had a great season this year, but he is out, so that could impact the game. It's a weird team because you think of when we're looking at that running back gauntlet, we were talking about all the good running backs the Cowboys have to play in a stretch. And obviously he is one of the best running backs in the league. The Colts run game just isn't working this year. It's just not. Like last year he was averaging 2.8 yards after contact. This year he's averaging 1.5 yards after contact. The Colts are passing the ball 62% of the time and running 38% of the time. So like this running team that we were fearing isn't really how they're attacking offenses or defenses. And a lot of that's because they're scoring 15.8 points per game, which is 30th or 31st in the league. And they've only been ahead in the second half 50 snaps all season long. So that forces you to get out of what you want to do in pass.
Most of them against the Eagles. Just going to throw it out there.
Right. Sorry. And then you look at, if they're passing the ball, Anthony Brown has been, kind of victimized a little bit. Teams are picking on him because they're staying away from Trayvon Diggs. But the Colts have passed the ball. 79% of their throws are 10 yards or less. So they're throwing the ball downfield less than any team in the entire NFL. Then you're playing a team that has given up 43 sacks this year, and the Cowboys defense has 45 sacks this year, which is number one in the league and one off of the pace of the Steelers for the most since 1980, which is crazy. So the Cowboys pass rush should absolutely feast this game, and I think they will. So like John said, the team's not overlooking it because there are still guys like Dak Prescott, Zeke. They were there in 2018 when the Colts just destroyed us when we weren't expecting that. So they do want to do that. And Dak has a win against 28 teams. He needs a win against the Colts to add that to his belt of victories. So there is a little bit of revenge game for him. And a lot of these guys on our team were younger and they weren't there to experience it. But this is the game you absolutely should win. The Colts are not going to score a lot of points on you as long as you don't turn the ball over. And the Colts don't have a lot of takeaways this year. They only have 11 for the season. You're probably going to win the game. Even if you have played an ugly first half like we did against the Giants, like you should win this game. And then the Colts turn the ball over a lot. They have 21 turnovers this year. So they don't pass protect well. They do throw the ball a lot, but it's short passes, a lot of screens, a lot of slants, hitches, things like that, shallow crossing routes. They're not really attacking you vertically. They don't run the ball well. They don't pass protect well. They turn the ball over a lot, and they don't get a lot of takeaways. Like, there's no reason the Cowboys should lose this game. So I absolutely think the Cowboys will win this game handily. The Falcons game comes to mind. I don't know that it's quite that impressive, but I could see this being a 40-point win, even though the Colts defense is good, because I think they will press to try to beat us and try to force some big plays. And when you do that, and you're going against a good pass rush, Matt Ryan might turn the ball over, might throw an interception. His arm strength's not really elite anymore. I don't want to call him washed, but he is. He just doesn't have that. He doesn't have a strong arm anymore. So a lot of his passes, and if he does try to attack you, he's not Matty Ice anymore. He's Matty Puddle of Water, and that's kind of what he is at this point in his career. So, yeah, I think the Cowboys win this game.
Score?
I'm gonna go. Spoonie, what'd you say? 40-16?
Oh no, 40-17.
40-17. All right, I'm gonna go 40-16.
Yeah,
I think don't. There's no way they score a lot of points on this. They're just not going to.
It's fair. Yeah, look, I think the Colts do things that are advantageous to limit things, if that makes sense, because they had to play, quote unquote, to their strengths, run the ball, shrink the game, play good defense. The defense has been good. Like, they haven't really been blown out a ton this year, ultimately. It's excluding the Sam Ellinger experience and what was going on there, okay? Outside of that. And they've played hard and things have happened, right? In general. I just don't care. I think there's no reason for the Cowboys to sit here and dilly-dally or play with their food or anything else. And I talk about urgency. Minnesota was urgency. Pissed off whatever they talked about after the Green Bay game that came out, they were urgent. Short week, so maybe sleptwalked through the first half, but we saw them, and I don't know the last time we've seen this. They flipped a switch in the second half that I don't think I've ever seen the Cowboys struggle over the past 2, 3, 4 years, struggle, and then just, we're him. I know it's the current great thing to say now. We're him. And they flipped the switch and said, actually, get the hell out of our way and let us go do what we do. I think the Cowboys flipped the switch out the gate, guys. That's where I'm at. I think this game, Cowboys win this game 40-3. They're averaging 15.8. They're missing their right tackle. They have a great running back. They run the ball well, supposedly, but they don't run the ball. Oh, that's what you just told me, right? They're not interested in really running the ball. Good luck against this defense. Good luck.
To be clear, when they do run the ball, they're not attacking the edges, and that's one of the things that has been the Cowboys' Achilles heel, literally is attacking the edges. That's what we can't stop. They run the ball up the middle. You'll see a lot of 12 personnel. You'll see a lot of them, attacking the A-gap, B-gap, things like that. They're just not going to score a lot of points. If they do score, it's going to be pretty low scoring.
I just don't see how they can. Their passing game, I've watched them. I watched the Eagles game very intently because where I was at when it was on and what was going on. I just don't see it. I just don't. Look, if they get a touchdown, I'd be very surprised. And look, and I haven't really been on that realm. And we've done these predictions and talked about these games throughout, and I've never really done that. I don't think the Cowboys give up a touchdown here. 40-6. How about that? I'll give them 2 field goals. 40-6. I'll give them 2 field goals. I don't see how this team, with Braden Smith being out, gets a touchdown. I just don't see it. I don't. And I think the biggest thing, to a certain extent, simply take the Minnesota game away. I think the Cowboys found something out there against the Giants. I think they did. Because we saw them, and we did this last year, John. I think a lot. If the Cowboys had that first half against the Giants last year, we're like, maybe we scrap it out. Maybe we get there. We never saw them go into the half and just flip the switch and be like, actually, never mind, and go forward. I think that matters in the momentum side and where we're at in this season and getting ready. So, yeah, I don't, and y'all know, I don't typically give the Cowboys 40 points. John's be like, Knicks is out here just throwing out points and doing crazy.
All 3 of us went 40. I haven't picked 40 all season.
Yeah, me either.
And we're going to get some good. And I'm like, their offense.
But I look at this team and I look at everything. I'm like, nah, man, I think this is a wash. And I think it's very important because of how the Colts have to win, that they had to get on them early. Because once you're up 2 scores, unlike other teams, there's no chance. Like the Colts have no chance. Once they're down 2 scores, it's not in their bag. They don't have that in their realm. So I'm going Cowboys 40-3. I'm live by, die by. I'm standing on it. John, first and foremost, before you give your score, brother, appreciate you so much. This man rocked with us for 2 hours and 18 minutes.
I asked him for 15 minutes, and he just
You
kept
did.
going. So I was like, okay.
You did. And we've had great guests. And some have rocked with us for a long time and whatnot. However, John has set the record. Put it on the board, ladies and gentlemen. Pick Six fan, put it on the board. Jon Machota has set the record as guest host long time. Look, we have a little private chat on the back end. I'm not naming no names of what we might see. John ain't even hit us on the back end. He's just like, man, I'm here. I'm good. Shout out to our guy, John. If you ain't subbed to The Athletic yet, to go over here and see this written work, you're missing out first and foremost. Always drop the link to follow him on Twitter if you missed him. And boom, right on time. Look, I love when the plane comes together. Thank you.
I'm already.
I love when the plane comes together. If you're not following my guy over there, by all means, go over there, follow our guy. And he might have a podcast, and I'm going to let him plug that himself. I've already plugged you enough. I'm going to let you plug that, good sir. First and foremost, Red Carpet, thank you once again. Your score for the Cowboys Colts Sunday night is?
Yeah, I think that they play around a little bit, and it ends up. I think they only score like 27, but I'm stuck around 10-13 for the Colts. The only way Cowboys lose this game is if there's just this abundance of turnovers that you're just like, man, I can't believe like Zeke fumbled, and then Dak had this pass tipped, and then they're just letting him hang around, and then maybe that's how it's a game in the fourth quarter. But I don't see that happening. I only think they scored 27 because I think that they're in the second half and their foot's kind of off the gas. And like I said, they're working in some backups because they're going to want to try and get guys as healthy as possible or keep them as healthy as possible. One thing to keep an eye on that we didn't talk about is with Terrence Steele. So he didn't practice yesterday or today. He's dealing with a family issue. Okay. And Mike McCarthy said, our thoughts and prayers are with him, and he's where he needs to be right now. So obviously there's something, an illness or something with his family. But Mike McCarthy said that he thinks that he'll be able to play Sunday night. If he doesn't, though, or let's say he's limited or whatever, look for Jason Peters to play right tackle. So that'll be kind of interesting to see. He got some work there, obviously, because Steele hasn't been at practice the last 2 days. So that's where he's gotten some work. And we just haven't seen Jason Peters very much. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how they work him in there, because he's obviously been practicing. He's been at the games. He should be in the best shape that he's been in. But yeah, I'll go 27-13 because you just know how this stuff is. It's silly. I wouldn't be surprised if they did score 40, but these games, just Sunday Night Football, end up being a little bit closer than they probably should be. But again, like you guys said, I don't see how they play poorly enough to lose this game.
And real quick, as she's coming here to steal, she's trying to steal my iPod charger. This is our producer Jay, who did our intro and everything.
Yeah, you did a great job. That's amazing. That is so well done.
I appreciate it.
All right, you can leave now. She's going to kill me later. She's going to kill me later. With that being said,
she did that overnight too, without any direction. She just said, "Hey, do you mind if I make you guys an intro to her dad?" And
wow.
Said, yeah,
I was like, yeah,
and then the next morning, she was like, "Here, it's done." With no feedback or suggestions from us, she just did it.
Man,
yeah, that part.
Wow.
Now, with that being said, I've already plugged The Athletic and everything else, but you got a podcast that they don't know.
About them Cowboys. It's through The Athletic. We do it twice a week, so once during the week, and then once we record one right after I get back from the locker room after every game. So sometimes, that's quicker than others, depending on how long Jerry Jones talks for outside the locker room, because I don't leave when that happens. But for the most part, we try and get it up by, like for, let's say, Sunday night's game, we'll have it up early Monday morning. And then we go back and do one during the week that they're usually about an hour long. And usually the one during the week is previewing the next game, and the one after the game is recapping the game and maybe looking a little bit forward and stuff like that. So yeah, check it out. About Them Cowboys. You can find it wherever, you find your podcast at.
I mean, John, are you going to dip your toe into some Knowles business and maybe a little catch on the nose, or are you just a fan? You're just chilling.
I mean, I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe in them more now than I have at any point in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, there's been some rock bottom there. It's been some tough times. So, but no, I mean, they could be. I mean, I grew up a fan of the Detroit Lions, so I know what rock bottom is. You know,
Say less.
I mean, there's nothing worse than that. So
say less. Hey man, ladies and gentlemen, man, y'all lit it up in the chat earlier for John, and always when we get out here with our guests and everything, I always tell you, man, look on Twitter, wherever you want to find us, man. If you ever need anything from us whatsoever, never hesitate. Let us know. We will return it tenfold to you. Thank you so much. You are definitely a part of the Pick Six family now. So we're gonna lean on you, get you back soon. So it is what it is.
thanks for having me on, man. I enjoyed it. Seriously.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Y'all know the drill. Y'all see the ads over there on the Twitter for everybody on here. Make sure y'all follow those ads. Go out there, sub to the Athletic and whatnot. You know, Sunday night, guys. Let's go get to 9-3. Remember, look, starting the season, I said 10-7. Preseason happened. I was like, I got the rookie numbers. I was still like, I think it's 10-7. I think I'm gonna fold. Like last year, I was pretty good. You know, I said I think they win 11-12. I was there. 10-7. I think the Cowboys are definitely going to break 10-7.
I said 12-5 again, and I felt pretty good about
You
it.
might be lying.
13-4 looks the most realistic right now.
He is. He definitely is. Spoonie, nailing it.
Oh, I'm frozen right now. Oh, there we go. I'm now I'm frozen.
That part.
I didn't catch that.
Part.
What did I miss?
No. Oh, you just wake up? Oh,
It was frozen. Everything blocked for a minute.
I said my 12-5 prediction I felt pretty good about, but you had 13-4, and I said you're probably going to be the closest out of everyone. So
yeah. I mean, yeah. Listen. I just feel that I really believe this weekend is going to be a real Dallas Cowboy fun weekend, a W and an addition, and I think. You know, for us watching the other division opponents go out there and make moves, I just think this move is gonna be over the top. Now, again, from the offseason, hey, Professor, we was there at the NFL draft when the AJ Brown trade. I just think that everything is coming together at the right time. So I think this weekend we're gonna experience a W and an addition. And I think, you know, we're going to have that great conversation moving forward. So I just can't wait.
I'll be honest with y'all. TC, Rich King in the building. 14-3. If the Cowboys hit 14-3, we're the number one seed, in my opinion. Y'all buy or sell?
100% I buy that.
Listen.
Eagles going to lose this week.
Let's go. Okay.
They're going to lose this week. Listen to this stretch. So the Eagles' run defense is not good. They do have Jordan Davis coming back. Go Dogs. But they have had a hard time stopping the run. They went out and brought some extra guys. They got Sue and all that.
How's that Quinn trading working out for him? But neither here nor I'm sorry, I'm being petty. Go ahead.
So they still haven't done a good job of stopping the run. And they play the Tennessee Titans, who I think have a pretty good running back. And then next week they play the New York Giants, who play the Washington Commanders this week. So depending on how that goes, they may be on a 3-game losing streak or maybe right back in the division. So those are not easy games. And then they play the Chicago Bears, and all they do is run. So they're going to lose one game at least before they play us. So if we just do our job and play 3 teams we should beat, we should be facing them with the chance to at least catch up and tie them. And we have a higher strength of victory and a higher strength of schedule. And at that point, we would have a better conference record than them. So we will have multiple tiebreakers if we can beat the Eagles Christmas Eve, or when we beat the Eagles Christmas Eve. But yeah, they're going to lose the Titans this week.
A win and an addition.
Win and an addition, and everything's in front of the Cowboys. Can't be mad at that, ladies and gentlemen. After Thanksgiving, a lot to be thankful for. Obviously, Sunday night, you know the drill. We'll be in the building, tweeting, everything else. We'll do the post game, whatnot, via Twitter Space. Shout out to Jon Machota once again, man. Clap it up for John coming through here, being awesome and rocking with us. And he set the record. Now we got to keep record now. 2 minutes, 2 hour, or 2 minutes. Jesus, to New York 2 minute maybe. I'll go back and I'll actually get the timestamp when he left. That's a new one. But we're going to keep track here for all of our people that come and join us. Now, prototypically, we don't even say on this song on Friday.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Like,
it was a great question. It was great.
Like
info.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was a great question.
Big facts. Big facts. Sometimes we make it to 11, but boy, he was here, outset all the way through. Man, shout out to him. Some great insight and some great behind the scenes stuff we got, and that's what we want to do here for y'all in general. What we think, what we do, we want to bring people up here and give y'all even more than what we have, and that helps us learn and gets us better, and gives y'all different insight during the season. So, what a great time! Cowboys get this dub though. I'm still Kobe system. I'm still Kobe system more. It's great to do it again. Andrew the Kool-Aid, even though I said 40 to 3, I give him 40 to 6. Cowboys, I feel the same way going into the Green Bay game. And we were doing the show, we were talking throughout, everything. There's no reason for the Cowboys to make this game close, just like the Green Bay game. Things happen. I don't care. I've moved on. 2 games. We feel better, and we move forward. So, with that being said, guys, we will be back for sure. Post-game show. I'm gonna do a space on the other side. And then, of course, each and every Wednesday and Friday, Pick 6 Live, Freestyle Friday. Appreciate y'all for rocking with us. Spoonie, last word before we get out of here, man.
Yeah, my last words real quick. I'm just going to say, go Dogs. We're going to handle business tomorrow. We're the #1 team in the country. We're repeating back-to-back champions, and we're going to handle LSU. Dave Hellman, Brian Broaddus, no offense. I think you guys know what's going to come. Love you guys. Big fan of you guys. But tomorrow is
it is what it is. No USC from y'all.
No,
none of
absolutely that. Not. No,
yeah, that part. Chance. Spoonie.
With a shout out to Mendoza. Understand this. Hey. Dominate, celebrate.
That's it. Dominate.
Just so you guys know, next Wednesday we may have a new Spoonie sermon song. We'll debut next week.
Oh, maybe we might. That's right. We've been working on the back end. We might have something on the back end there for sure. Here's what I want. Spoonie's talked about a cherry on top for a long time. Long time. Let us all hope that cherry shows up after we beat the Colts, right? And that cherry is Odell Beckham. Until then, y'all be safe.